to order this committee of the whole to order at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. I do not believe we have any remote electronic attendance, correct? Correct. So we move to board appointments. This is reappointments to our Citizens Advisory Council on Urban Planning for Carol Treble and Janet Zam. Any questions there? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to our presentations. Ms. Whitley, you have anything to say for our 4 awardees?
Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see so many neighbors in the council chambers for the streetscape project down in the Floreciente neighborhood. 20-something years ago, we hired a consultant to do a study. They suggested many things, and one of those things was a streetscape. Fast forward to 2014, they came up with this concept when we did an update to the plan. And then fast forward to 2019, on behalf of the association in Floreciente, someone submitted an application to redo the sidewalk in front of the Boost Mobile building. That's like 409 or 407, 409 7th Street, I'm sorry. And it was gonna cost, estimated to cost about $35,000 just to do that sidewalk. And Alderman Witt stepped up in the meeting and said, if we're gonna spend that much on sidewalk, let's do a streetscape. And so that's how the streetscape came together. So far, we completed 2 phases of that. The remaining phase is to put stamped concrete in the intersection with the F logo from their sign, and then to buy the arch sign as you enter into the streetscape. And we're hoping to do that this year. We're working with engineering to firm up those plans and then put them out for bid and to complete that. So we get the streetscape built, but building it is one thing and maintaining it is another. Of course, our team came to us, hey, you know, we don't have time to go down and take care of emptying the garbage down there. Let's see if we can work with the partners. So a collaboration was formed. So we've been working with the Floreciente neighborhood, been working with the owner of the Boost Mobile building, as we call it, Augustine Lopez. We've been working with Project Now, Dwight and Mary McNeil. And then we've been working with Boys and Girls Club down there, Tori. They maintain the maintenance down there for us. So they keep it in prime condition, and we just want to recognize them tonight for their efforts. So, Mayor, if you want to read off the names, and then we can all come in and take a picture.
Take pictures, yes.
All
So,
right.
Neighbor of the Month Award, Project Now, Inc. Then we have, followed by Neighbor of the Month Award for Excellence in Property Improvement and Maintenance, Augustine and Raquel Lopez. Followed by Boys and Girls of the Mississippi Valley and Floreciente Neighborhood Association. So, go in that order.
All right, so we can all come up with
Where's
do you guys want one picture together, or you want separate pictures for? Okay. All right, if you want to go up here by the mayor's kind of in that little view there.
I wore my picture out.
Don't be shy, jump in there, folks.
Oh, yeah. Hey, neighbor. How's it going?
Oh, I'm just gonna the ordinance. If you guys have any questions about it, focus.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, really.
Let's go again. All right, sincere thank you to you all. Thank you.
Easy drive.
A joyful celebration, yeah. All right, 4.2 is a presentation from Zen City. Mr. Vitas?
Yes, I believe we have online with us, are they there? I don't see them. Hang on, we're pulling them up. Elena? I don't see them up on the main screen.
Once they share, I'll.
Oh, once they share, okay. So following up to the last meeting we had, I presented council with some information about the value of potentially using Zen City to provide us with information, community information for decision-making purposes going forward. And I've invited the representatives from Zen City back, I believe it's Elena and Josh, if I'm not mistaken. And they're both online, and they have a brief presentation to share with council on their product and how it could be used here in Moline and how it has been used elsewhere to produce the information that others are using to make informed decisions. I think there's some great examples in what they sent out, and there are certainly some great examples I know that the mayor picked up on, I believe it was Chattanooga, Tennessee, who uses it for budgeting purposes, actually, to gather public input. So with that, I'd like to just turn it over to the two of them and let them present it at this time. It's 2 a.m. there, by the way.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you. We're just waiting to see you online.
All right, let me know when I could.
Go ahead and share.
I should start. Perhaps if I share my screen.
Yep. Yep. It's okay to do that. There we go.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Bob, thanks for the introduction, for setting this up. I don't know if Tori's in the room, but it's been a pleasure working with Tori as well. So thank you. And Mayor Alderman, thanks for giving us this chance to share a little bit about Zen City. We'd be excited to work with you guys. So I have a little slide deck prepared, and I'll go through some examples. Hopefully it won't take too long. My name is Alina Grissom. I'm an account executive here at Zen City. Been with the company for around 3 years. And with me is Jonathan Shafir, who is tuning in from Israel as well. So I would love to just give you guys an overview. I met Bob at the ILCMA conference pretty recently, which kind of precipitated all of this. And then I understand the mayor also met us at the U.S. Conference of Mayors as well.
Yeah. From afar.
Cool. From afar. Hopefully in person soon. So I'll share a little bit about what we do. If you guys are following my screen here. So Zen City, we're a software company. We work exclusively with local governments, so cities, villages, counties across the U.S. Here are some of the names of some of our partners in your region. Of course, highlighted is Bettendorf, which I understand you could see from some of your offices. We've been working with Bettendorf for around 2 years now, and that's been a really fun partnership for us. I like to start with this quote, which kind of captures our mission and our heart. So this is a quote by the Chief Innovation Officer of Corona, California, who basically said the most important question we have been trying to solve is how do we as a community understand the quiet majority? And that is the central mission of Zen City, to help city leaders like yourself better understand that big swath of residents, for better or for worse, who is just hard to hear from, that quiet majority out there. With a lot of cities that we work with, it seems like it's easy to hear from groups of people sometimes. And sometimes also it's hard to know whether those voices represent the other thousands of residents living within Moline. People who don't know how to address the city, operate in a language other than English, may be working that 2 to 11 shift and aren't able to make council meetings. For whatever reason, there seems to be these quiet, that quiet majority out there, and that's where we seek to step in at Zen City, just to provide more voices for you guys as you're making decisions, as you're monitoring projects, getting responses from residents to those projects and to those initiatives, and in general to have more data points when it comes to moving forward. So for a city like Moline, what we've kind of crafted as we've been working with Tori is we'd love to help you guys on two fronts. The first front is called Zen City Organic. That's what Bob presented in the last meeting, I believe. And this is a way for us to help you tap into that quiet majority. Second side of the coin is actually an engagement tool, which I'll talk about shortly. So Zen City Organic is basically so when we start working with the city, the first thing we do is we go out and we look at all of the spaces and the places that residents of Moline are talking about the city, talking about the city's services. Now, they're not necessarily talking to you guys, but they're talking about you. So this can be anything from a neighborhood Facebook page to Twitter handle to a Reddit page. We also look at local news sources, trying as much as possible to leave no stone unturned. And then, of course, tap into what you're currently using, any app or any current way that residents are communicating with you. We take all of that quantitative, all of those conversations, and turn it into data, into a live dashboard that looks something like this. This is the dashboard of Bettendorf. I say live because all of the data that we gather, it's presented live. So it's a living, breathing dashboard that gets updated minute by minute. And to give an example of how much feedback is really out there, in the city of Bettendorf for the past 30 days, our dashboard collected around 34,000 feedback points coming from a slew of different places. We do several things with this data. The first thing is assign sentiment to it. So out of those conversations, how many are positive, how many neutral, how many are negative? What's nice for cities and probably for Alderman and and the team that I'm talking to right now is once we do set up dashboards, it's usually neat to see the amount of positive feedback that is out there, which more often than not outweighs the negative. And this data allows city managers and city leaders to have confidence to move forward and not to get everything getting stopped because one or two negative voices out there. We assign sentiment to it, and then we also start drilling things down according to different projects. So we're able to create a project for you guys and siphon feedback that's only related to that topic. As an example, with Bettendorf, we've been working a lot with their I-74 bridge. And just figuring out, as the city is getting messaging across, how are residents reacting to it? Is there misinformation out there? Are there concerns that you may not know about that people are bubbling up? Who's really in control of the narrative? Is it a local news source or is it the city? And how can we help you guys be more in control? With Tori, we've identified different projects we'd love to help with you guys on, including swimming pool and the sesquicentennial celebration. And so these are some of the projects we'd love to help you guys with. And lastly, we have, as we're looking through this data, we also have reporting capabilities. I highlighted some reports in this slide deck on ways that each city is assigned a live data analyst. And so this data analyst is looking through the data coming out of Moline's residents and creating reports. And a report is a chance just to get a snapshot of what it is we're finding. For example, we found in Bettendorf there was an article that really spurred a lot of conversations about housing. And so we were able to create a report to see what were the main concerns that people were talking about. Did they think affordable housing was something the city was responsible for? Do they think the city's doing fine with? Kind of categorizing the different topics of conversation. anything from that to this other example includes a garbage collection schedule change. Where, the city knew that there was some confusion out there, and we were able to help them identify exactly what the confusion was, which was more related to residents needing or feeling like they needed a little bit more notice. So that is everything from our organic side. In addition, we also have a tool called Zen City Engage, which is a way to go out into the community and create a two-way conversation between city and your residents. So while the organic side is constantly going on in the background, Zen City Engage is more proactive. And what it is a hub for residents to kind of go in and learn about different projects that City of Moline is undertaking. We would work with Tori to set up these different projects, and different project pages could look something like this. Let's say there's your pool project or a park redevelopment. This would allow residents a chance to do two things. First, get educated on that particular project. And then secondly, through this page, you'd be able to create small surveys, polls, community message boards, and allow residents to sign up for updates as the project is moving along. And so this is a resident-facing hub that allows residents to follow the projects that they're interested in, get updates on it, and answer surveys. Said I was going to try to stay within 10 minutes. I think I reached that, but that's where I came. That's my presentation for now. I'd love to open up the floor for questions and any thoughts.
Great, Mr. Moore.
Hi, thank you. Mike's over here. So you mentioned the quiet majority. Who is that quiet majority? Are those just people that interact online, or is there some way of capturing people who don't get on Facebook or Twitter or Reddit, et cetera?
Sure, great question. So that quiet majority generally we classify as people you don't hear from. So people, not the ones who are coming to a council meeting or not the ones who are calling you. So what we do to tap into them, of course, we can't get every single resident. That would be wonderful. But we do look at the places where a lot of conversations are happening. So definitely social media and different online platforms. But for the older generation or people who are not on social media, we also make sure to look at local news sources. So TV, radio, kind of places that are not necessarily social media, but still contain feedback that would be helpful for you guys to know.
Is there a follow-up question?
Well, yeah, I'm wondering how, so people may call their alderman. Like there might be an issue where you get, 5, 6, 7, 8 calls, and, we all may get that. How does that information then inform this system, I guess, or does it get into the system at all?
If it's a phone call, it probably will not. If it's an email or a complaint filed through an app, if it's anything that has a digital footprint, we would definitely make sure that's included.
I think could I interject, Alderman? That would be the job of the alderman to triangulate the digital information with the in-person information, or in-person being the contact you're getting.
But I don't generate fancy reports, so.
No, but you read the fancy reports.
Sure.
And just the point of clarity. Mr. Schmidt?
What percentage of the content is typically coming from social media versus other platforms?
Great question. It depends from city to city, kind of the demographics of the population. I would say between 70 and 80%.
Yeah. And how is this, knowing that the majority of that is coming through there, how are you differentiating from a standard social listening partnership? And I just, as a matter of context, I do work at an advertising agency, so I'm very familiar with that type of product.
Wonderful. Yeah, several ways. I understand a lot of social listening tools generally operate according to a keyword search. So they'd be kind of looking and locating places where the word Moline or the city of Moline is mentioned. We started doing that and soon realized that that's not as helpful for local governments, because if you have a resident talking about a pizza parlor in Moline, that is not necessarily a important feedback point for you. So as opposed to a keyword search, we do things on the back end where the content that we're feeding into the algorithm and into the platform, as much as possible, we're ensuring that that's places, channels that residents are specifically talking about services and kind of, the information is directly related to you. So that's the first thing. And I would say broader than that, though, we live and breathe local government. So as opposed to maybe some other social listening tools that work with the private sector, a lot of the way the Zen City dashboard is designed and the reports are designed are specifically designed to be taken and are often taken by city managers or aldermen into department head meetings, council meetings, and the service side of things would generally includes a data analyst and a customer success manager who kind of act like consultants. So though they work with different partners of ours in your general region, and they'll be there to share best practices that we're finding across other cities, and benchmarking yourselves according to what other people are doing as well. So there's also just that added layer of service and somewhat consulting side of things, specifically related to local government.
Thank you.
Mr. Timian?
I have two questions. Can you speak a little bit more about how the sentiment analysis functions, if it is malleable at all? Because obviously regional sentiment changes and vocabulary is a factor in there. Second question, and you can just delve into it. Does your tech also work with multilingual support so we can get a better grasp of our Spanish-speaking population, and we have a number of West African population as well in the area?
Sure. Let me start with the second one first, because that's an area that's really important to us. So yes, we definitely, a big part of the quiet majority generally is people who operate in a language other than English. So we do very much make sure when it comes to different channels that we're feeding into the algorithm that we're also looking at channels of those populations. And then there's a translation tool as well. So if the conversation comes in a different language, let's say Spanish, it would get automatically translated. So the report would include not only English conversations, but also Spanish and other languages that you mentioned.
Okay.
And if needed, we could create reports that are a little bit more nuanced and dive deeper into those conversations. First question, sentiment analysis. So Density is built on an algorithm that takes these conversations and is able to tell, which ones are positive and neutral or negative. So if a resident is just talking about, a city announcement or a city messaging, not necessarily expressing anything, that would be classified as neutral. The algorithm is operating constantly. It's getting smarter with time, especially the longer we work with the city. It kind of learns how that city and those different residents operate. And then we also have a team on the back end that's constantly checking manually. I think it's like 3% of the conversations. And if anything was categorized or miscategorized, they'll flag it, and hopefully it wouldn't happen again based off of that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else from the council? Yes,
Hi.
Mr. Moyer.
Thanks. So I'm kind of interested in this Engage. I think it looks pretty interesting. How difficult are those projects to set up? And also, is that information then going to be fed back to the public? Will everyone get to see this information, or is it just for staff, or how do we get to use that data?
Yes, and so Engage is resident facing. So residents will interact with the projects, the different engagements related to each project. When it comes to surveys, we compile the surveys and share the data with staff, and then a lot of cities then share those survey reports also publicly, but that would be your call. In terms of setup and what that looks like, so the back end of things is actually, and I'm not saying this just because I work with Zen City, but I'm also not the most techie person. So it is pretty user friendly to set up a project. It's designed for someone, whether it's yourself, Alderman, or Bob or Tori, to set up a project pretty easily. You would populate the project according to different texts and images that you want to share with residents. And then add a different layer of engagement, whether that's a survey or a 2-question poll. We have quite a big library of templates that are already available, or you could create something from scratch as well.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Went.
Thank you. I was reflecting on like this communication and outreach for projects.
Yeah.
How granular does that get? Is that just for the big, we're doing a generational project down at the park and those sorts of things, or do you get down into neighborhood projects with engineering, and because that sometimes has been an issue with getting information out to the residents about what's happening, and sometimes not getting any input back from them that could improve the project.
Right, so if I understood the question correctly, it's how specific can the projects be?
Yeah. Like within your scope, I mean, is that something where we have 6 or 7 capital improvement projects where we're redoing streets, doing a bike path through here, doing whatever?
Yeah.
Do you guys do at that granular level, or do you just basically, hey, we're redoing John Deere Road, and like that's a huge project, or the I-74 bridge, and what's the scope, or is it just if you got enough money, we'll do anything?
No, so that would definitely be up to your discretion as a city. We have cities that only focus on big capital improvement projects, but honestly, the majority of them, if you open their Zen City Engaged, sometimes there's 30 projects opened at the same time. And the beauty of it is a resident can click into that and click into the project that they're interested in, or the project that's in their neighborhood. They may not be interested in a park in a completely different neighborhood, but in a bike path that's on theirs. So it is, in terms of numbers of projects, it's completely unlimited. So it depends on what you wanna choose.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
One other thing, I think a couple weeks ago we had a handout that went through some examples of stuff you had done, and one of the examples in there I think was maybe getting input on like a fee structure or a fee increase, or in kind of getting feedback from the public, and I know it was probably just an example, but some of the feedback was, and I think the most why people were against it was because they thought that in whatever that department was, there was too much waste. Well, sometimes in people from the outside just presume things and that kind of stuff. In those kind of approaches with your platform and how that works, is there an educational component? Because I mean, if you just go out and survey, you're going to get a lot of people that say, oh yeah, they waste a ton of money down there. But
Right.
when you dig into actually what's going on and ask them, okay, what do you want to cut? That becomes a much more difficult discussion. And so how does that work with you guys when you get into those sorts of community input?
Yeah, that is a great question. Also, and a great example. I'm impressed you picked up on that one. Yeah, so that was with the city of Seguin, Texas, that they're about to raise a stormwater utility fee. They had a sense that the general public was against it, but not actually why. So the assumption was, residents are against it because who wants to pay anything, and so they asked us to generate a report to identify what the main concern was amongst those negative comments. And you're correct. The main concern we found was request to the city to be a little bit more transparent, to explain the reason behind the fee. So what that report did was just highlight that to the city. And because we do look at organic discourse, that usually raises a red flag, and then we want to do something about it. So in that particular example, we set up a project with Zen City Engage related to the fee, and that added an educational component to it, addressed the residents' concern. We also ran a survey, I believe, and so that allowed the city manager to actually pause, not just plow through and realize residents have this concern of a request to understand a little bit more. And so we used our various tools to navigate the best way to do that moving forward.
Thank you.
Very much.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Brien?
It seems like initially, anyway, you'll have to have staff work with you on this. Do you have any idea how, with Bettendorf, which is a pretty good mirror of what goes on here, I guess from Israel point of view, because you guys are way over there. And maybe this is for Bob too, how much time will staff have to spend on, they're gonna have to work with you guys at least at the beginning of this, right? To get everything in place, and when the feedback comes in about 47th Street or 48th Street, or any kind of subject like that, you're gonna have to get a hold of Public Works, and they'll get the feedback. Initially it sounds like it will be helpful, that feedback will be helpful, but in the meantime, how much time will city staff, just a ballpark, is it shown, like with Bettendorf, has it been, I don't know, have they said anything like, in regards to the staff that time uses on this, or do you have any idea what that would be, or?
Yeah, so the goal would be to take time off of staff's hand and to actually help us, as opposed to add something else on their plate. So all of the setup is done on our end, and the reporting is also done on our end. So when it comes to Zen City Organic, no staff time required. The most it would be if a staff wants to request a report about a specific topic. They just notify us, and we'll produce it. When it comes to Zen City Engage, it does require a little bit of time to set up a project, but then once the project is set up, it kind of works on by itself.
So just to be clear, you go in and if there is an educational component that is part of the confusion and the negative comments or something, you go in, analyze that, and tell us that it's an educational problem. The staff doesn't have to go in to some data set and interpret that.
Oh yeah, certainly not. That would be a headache.
Okay.
We would do that for you.
That's the whole purpose of what you're doing. I get it.
Exactly.
Are there any other questions for our presenters? Okay, hearing none, thank you so much for joining us. And
sure, thank you guys for listening and for great questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vitas. Anything further?
No, I guess just in concluding, I want to thank Elena. I think you did a great job presenting the overall scope of what Zen City is about and how it's used by local governments across the U.S. Going forward, of course, I'll just look for some direction from council, in terms of the expense. I don't believe, we do have a communications coordinator, and I know Tori was working directly with Zen City to kind of get us to where we are tonight. But I guess going forward, as we look at our budgeting process, there was a really great example that I read about from the mayor's conference that was shared with me this week related to the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is a fairly large city. And they really wanted to get their arms wrapped around what the public was thinking as they were preparing their strategic goals for the year and how they would allocate their resources. And I think Zen City stepped up, gathered the information that they were looking for, and it was reliable. And then based on that, they proceeded then to, prepare their financial plans, their strategic plans, as well as then adopting a budget to support what the citizen input was. So, and that's just one example. I'm sure there's probably, with 300 cities using your system, it's up and running all 24/7, 365. It never shuts down. So I think there's two sides to it. One is, of course, the engagement side, which I think we use SurveyMonkey, if I'm not mistaken. We've used it in Parks and Recreation. We've used it over at Renew. We've used it here at City Hall. And then it's limited. I mean, we don't have, limited in terms of its information gathering capacity, right? So, I'm still a supporter of it. I still think it's a great idea. I think, for a year, obviously we can try it out for the year. If it produces the results we're hoping for and provides the information we're looking for, that's great. We can continue. If we find out at the end of a year that it's not really doing that, then we pretty much end our relationship, say thank you very much, and we move on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rowett. We move to number 5, public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? Okay, here, seeing none. Any questions on the agenda? Just to clarify, we're taking number 14 on the council agenda, which is Council Bill 3016-2022, been moved to the non-consent agenda. So we move to our cow agenda. 7.1, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with 5 Cities Construction Company for project number 1375 50th Street Place Reconstruction in the amount of $345,834. Mr. Vitas.
The project is budgeted and recommending approval as provided to council this evening.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Moyer, second by Alderman Went. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. 7.2, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Legacy Corporation of Illinois for project number 1406, 13th Street and 26th Avenue Sanitary Sewer Extension in the amount of $159,591.50.
Again, a project that recommend for approval coming from the utility department to Legacy in the amount as stated in the resolution.
Sorry, jumped the gun. Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Mr. Moyer, motion and seconded by Alderman Went. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 7.3, a resolution authorizing the mayor to make application to enter into an agreement and to execute all necessary assurances and certifications to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for CDBG entitlement funding under the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended of certain projects and programs for fiscal year 2022, and approving projects and program recommendations of the Citizen Advisory Council on Urban Policy for the use of 2022 Community Development Block Grant Funds and the 2022 Annual Action Plan, which contains said projects and programs, and authorizing the mayor to implement those improved projects and programs upon the approval of the City of Moline 2022 Annual Action Plan by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and to exercise any and all powers required to obtain such funding and to implement those approved projects.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Alderman Went. Anything from
No, nothing further.
discussion?
Nothing further.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 7.4, a resolution declaring the property at 5124 6th Avenue, Moline, Illinois, previously acquired by the city as abandoned residential property to be surplus, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an agreement for transfer of real estate and do all things necessary to convey the property at 5124 6th Avenue to Moline Community Development Corporation, an Illinois not-for-profit corporation.
Move to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Moyer. Any discussion? Nope. Hearing,
Your Honor.
oh, sorry, yes.
Oh,
Mr.
I just want to say, you know, this is a great partnership with the MCDC, and I'm glad we're continuing it, and it's been very successful so far, so.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. 7.5, resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a Fifth Amendment to an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Moline, Illinois, and the Rock Island County Metropolitan Mass Transit District, Metrolink.
Move to approve.
Motion by Alderman
Okay.
O'Brien, seconded by Alderman Went. Any discussion?
Chelsea is here for Metrolink this evening in case there's any questions, but this is a continuation of the longstanding and ongoing engagement between the city and Metrolink, and we're recommending approval of this intergovernmental agreement going forward related to our CNG systems. And as we move through the process to replace that system, thanks to the efforts of Mr. Nelson for securing the funding, this establishes the continuation of that relationship. And eventually CNG, like other things, will go its own way, but just not today. It'll probably one day be electric from the way the industries are going. But for now, 10% of our fleet is CNG. So it's not like we can just walk away. And this is really critical because the existing infrastructure is beyond its useful life.
Yes, Mr. Went.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to Metronet, and I know you guys, through this process, have been very flexible with us and addressed a few of the concerns I had in the past and everything, but it is a great partnership moving forward, and kudos to you and to Mr. Nelson, so thank you.
I think you meant to say Metrolink, right?
Did I say Metro?
There's too many metros.
I think it's common.
Too many metros.
But we understand, thank you. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 7.6, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an intergovernmental agreement by and between the city of Moline, Illinois, and Rock Island County Metropolitan Mass Transit District, Metrolink, for a joint project to address drainage and pavement distress issues on 39th Avenue.
Move to approve.
I love the in chorus. Motion by Alderman O'Brien, second by Alderman Went. Discussion. Mr. Vitas, anything?
I would just recommend approval because it does cause destruction to the bottom of their buses. They bottom out constantly at this location, so it does cause physical damage to the property.
Mr. Went.
And thank you very much for including multiple sidewalks along this, and 'cause I know at one time that was said that we couldn't do that down there across, so thank you very much for including that. And this is going to also help those businesses along there. I know that there's been some car carriers that have gotten bottomed out along there as well, so thank you very much. And you guys are a wizard at getting money from other places, so we appreciate
Yep.
that even more.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, informationals. Mr. Silverman, Family and ADU Text Amendment Ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to you and the City Council. It's good to be back. What is before you, what's in your agenda packet, is a distillation of a lot of hard work by the Plan Commission on the question of ADUs and how do we properly introduce them into the city. They gave a lot of thought to a lot of issues. I thought they did a really good job, and I thought they organized their thoughts very well, which helped in creating the ordinance. What this does is it does two things. It amends the definition of family because we were a little bit concerned with some of the things we saw in it and how that definition can work against the city. It was not necessarily particular to the ADU issue, but it got caught up in it as a part of the broader discussion we were having. So that is dealt with in the first section. Section 2 then gets into the heart of the ADU regulations. I tried to keep them pretty straightforward and clean. I didn't want to do a lot of violence to the zoning code and amend all different sections. So what we did is we set up a special section that will become a new Division 9 of Article 3 of the zoning code. And it establishes 7 definitions for the different types of ADUs we would be regulating. It then has general limitations and requirements. As you can see, ADUs will be special uses allowed only in the R2 district. And then they're subject to the development standards. The property owner for which the ADU, where the ADU is located with the principal structure, must be a permanent resident in the dwelling, the principal detached dwelling, or the ADU itself. And then there's some, one of the concerns of the Plan Commission, and this is actually how we got into the whole discussion of definition of family, was the Plan Commission wasn't comfortable with just letting ADUs be for anyone who wants to live there. They wanted to limit it in some way. So they wanted it to be a blood relative or someone who has some type of caregiver relationship with the people who live in the principal dwelling unit. So that's provided for in there. And then the table in 35, the new proposed section 353915, gets into the different types of regulations for the 7 different types of ADUs. Generally, the maximum square footage would be 600 square feet. The minimum would be 190 square feet. There was a discussion on calculating maximum height. No taller than the existing principal dwelling unit, but in no event taller than 20 feet. And then minimum number of off-street parking spaces was 1. Again, ADUs will be special uses in the R2 district, so an applicant who wants to build an ADU will have to get a special use permit, which will trigger a public hearing at the Plan Commission, and then of course an ordinance that's adopted by City Council at the appropriate time. And then they also have to go through administrative site plan review, and that's just cross-referenced in here to those relevant sections of the zoning code. So that's the ordinance. Again, I thought the Plan Commission did a great job, and I'm available for questions or comments.
Thank you. Mr. Timian?
Will that special use permit be inherited through property selling, or will they need to reapply the new owners?
Well, that's a really good question. Our ordinary position on special use permits is they're personal to the holder. This is a little bit different though, because this has resulted in either a permanent change to the principal structure on the property or the construction of a detached type of dwelling unit. So I think in this case, and I don't know if the city has a standard in terms of recording special use permits, but I think you'd want to make sure you record these special use permits to make sure that it's quite clear how that ADU got on that property and when it was authorized.
Thank you. Mr. Moyer?
Thank you. So I have a few questions.
Sure.
Minimum number of parking spaces, 1. Is that 1 in addition to what the house requires, or just?
Yeah,
So
it would be.
In addition to?
Mhm.
Okay, I noticed that when it comes to the family members, is that, so how's that gonna work? So if you build this unit, right, a son stays in it for a while, gets married and moves on, now you've got this empty dwelling, you're no longer allowed to use it.
Well, you could have another blood family member move in, and
Right.
this was a topic of conversation, and we had a lot of back and forth about, well, how do we actually enforce this? So you could have another blood family member move in based upon how the regulations are presented right now, or if the situation evolves over time and they need a caregiver or something like that. That's your limitation, but you're right, it's a practical enforcement issue.
But you're not gonna be able to sell the home.
What do you mean? I'm
Well,
sorry.
if I then if I have this and then I wanna sell the home, and the only people in the market for that house then are gonna be people who can use the ADU.
True, I mean, there's practical issues with this. Now, no one has to occupy it, obviously, but it could be an office for whoever's there, home occupation, or something like that. But I think, you know, the introduction of ADUs presents a lot of practical issues that you're bringing up, no doubt.
And I understand the idea of having, you know, if you were to then open it up for regular rent, we wouldn't wanna see somebody moving in for a week at a time and,
Yes.
you know, a constant turnover or whatnot. But, yeah.
We did talk about some registration requirements and things like that, and that brought up the issue of does the city actually want to get into the business of monitoring who's living in what location? And whether they're actually have that type of relationship with the occupant of the principal dwelling. So it is a practical issue. It could raise some privacy concerns for the homeowners, so these are things we need to think about.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, then Mr. O'Brien.
I think this ordinance as presented is entirely too strict, and I think the purpose of moving forward with an ADU is to allow for greater density, is to allow for adding to affordable home stock within the city of Moline. And I think that removing the familial requirement is an easy one. I think that taking a closer look at some of those other requirements is something we definitely have to do, because for the reasons Alderman Moyer put forward of just those practical considerations, and just it's not accomplishing what we're looking to accomplish from my perspective. I don't have all the answers for how I want to see that change right now, but on that first pass, that is my inclination. I understand there are concerns of wanting to maintain neighborhoods and that there will be some NIMBY issues that come out of this, but I think that we need to work through those, and we've not thread the needle correctly here.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien?
Well, I was actually going to say I like the strictness of this ordinance, albeit unenforceable.
This is why you guys are the policymakers.
That's right, exactly. I don't think any of it's enforceable. I think even you have to own the property and live there. Landlords are they're gonna run right through that. I mean, we've dealt with, Moline has a long history of dealing with absentee landlords, and I don't think this will be any different. I think as strict, and you guys can write this as strict as you want to do it, but there's gonna be, they're gonna wiggle around this ordinance, and you're gonna have some really, the way I see it, it's going to be dense, unattractive development in the city that we're going to encourage, and I'm a no vote on this, no matter how strict you write it.
Thank you. Mr. Wayne?
I agree with Alderman Schmidt that I think this is a good starting point to go off of, but, you know, we talk about economic waste. You know, you build this nice carriage house behind your house, and then your mother-in-law passes away, and now you're stuck. You can't sell it to anybody else. Some of the other requirements on here is, you know, if you happen to have a ranch home, then you could get the full 600 square feet. But if you had a two-story home, you may be limited to only 400 square feet, depending on what the size is, regardless of the size of your lot. You know, I mean, you could have 2 acres and be stuck on what you could do. I think I had sent some things into you that if you did a conversion, so somebody had like a detached 3-car garage and wanted to convert it, but it's 750 square feet, that technically you may have to demolish 150 square feet of this thing to convert it. I mean, so I completely agree with you. And so what I would like to see is, and let's hear from everyone else, is that maybe we send to David some of our changes, put a little memo together with some examples, say like, here's a policy decision 1, policy decision 2, and here's some of what you guys had brought up, and maybe we can just work through it that way. And then at the end, if it's a Frankenstein that we all can terrific. If not, Alderman O'Brien will get his wish, and
It's still going to be a Frankenstein.
or maybe it
Frankenstein's still Frankenstein.
may not happen at all. But I think that's probably the best route forward, because we could sit here.
We could talk all night.
Yeah.
We've done that in the past as well, of submitting, you know, to you, and then it comes together in a memo, et cetera. So I will work with staff on a schedule for that. Certainly, it's something that's been out there a while, and we want to keep moving forward. So we'll talk about how soon we can include it in a discussion of how much you can get to us. But for now, I mean, this is something many of you have had on your mind for a while. I would think that by Friday you could send your notes to Mr. Silverman. Your ideas, is that okay? I'm sorry, you had your hand up.
I just
Mr.
wanted to say
Williams.
that I agree with Alderman O'Brien. As well-intentioned as this will blow up in our face like few things have, because we're going to have some very We have some landlords that once this thing takes off, you're gonna see these things pop up in not nice areas of town. And we're just gonna have a density like we've never had before, and we can't enforce it now as it's written. No matter how we tweak it, then we're gonna have to have more people go out and try to enforce the enforceable. I think this is a Pandora's box. If we open this, we're gonna regret it. But
Thank you.
just my thoughts.
So you won't be sending any recommendations, is that what you're saying? Okay,
blank sheet.
less for you to read, Mr. Silverman. I'm sorry. Mr. Timian.
Out of curiosity, we had mentioned we don't want week-long, residents, renters. So we're basically talking about the Airbnbs and things like that. What real enforcement mechanisms do we have at our disposal to stop that?
Registration of, but,
They're
you
not
know,
doing that now, so, yeah.
there's not great options.
Okay,
I'm not
so-
gonna tell you there's a great option.
So to prevent that, which I think, I'm hoping we all agree, like, we don't want a bunch of Airbnbs popping up next to everyone's house, because that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. Outside of just saying you can't do it, we just don't allow them to build, right?
Right.
So,
Mr. Nguyen.
thank you.
Well, certainly, some communities have put very large fines on that, liens on properties.
Of course.
Escalating fines for repeat offenders, the registration, taking it off. I mean, you could get pretty substantial on what those fines, because you're talking about a piece of real estate. I mean, there is now something that you can lien against to then, whether it's to pay for a part-time or full-time person. I mean, we've been talking about hiring someone so that we can do single-family rental registrations in our community. This is something where, because there are hundreds and thousands of communities that have done this, and it hasn't turned into Armageddon. And so I think we can maybe look at some of the enforcement mechanisms for them. If we're going to do this, I completely agree. The teeth have to be sharp. And so that's what I'd like to see moving forward on this.
Like strict fines, really, yeah.
And that we enforce them and we follow up.
Hang on, I'm writing some notes.
Not just written in the paper.
Okay. Were there other hands that I may have missed? Do you want to weigh in, Mr. Waldron?
Yeah. See, I haven't heard anything that excites me to comment. I'm at this point with Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Williams.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Silverman. Everyone, they will be in touch. 8.2, July Status and Information Report, Mr. Vitas.
Sure, I'd like to thank, first of all, staff for taking the time to put together their monthly report for July, basically identifying all of the projects that are well underway and have been ongoing since the beginning of the fiscal year. If there's ever any questions on these, I mean, feel free to reach out. I think they're pretty clear. I think they're pretty succinct. I think they identify what's going on. If there's any questions, by all means, we're here to answer those questions. Otherwise, I'm just filing the report.
Thank you. Saw a thumbs up. All right, hearing nothing further on that, we will move to calling the council to order for our regular meeting. Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good night.
Good night, David.
Do we have an invocation, Mr. Schmidt? Nope. Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams,
Present?
Macias, Went,
Present.
Timian,
Present.
Moyer,
Present.
O'Brien,
Present.
Waldron,
Present.
Schmidt.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of Committee of the Whole Council and Executive Session Minutes of June 28th, 2022, Special Council and Executive Session Minutes of July 1st, 2022, and appointments made during Committee of the Whole this evening, July 12th, 2022.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to read the resolution.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
more for the
apologies.
consent.
Sorry. Resolutions, 1119-2022, resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an agreement between the City of Moline and the Board of Education of Moline Coal Valley School District Number 40, setting forth the terms for assignment of 4 police liaison officers to Moline schools for the 2022-23 school year. Council Bill 1120-2022, a resolution authorizing the Fleet and Facilities Manager to purchase 2022 John Deere Mach 1 XL Medic Utility Vehicle from International Automated Systems Incorporated from Baldwin, Wisconsin, in the amount of $53,624.84, utilizing General Services Administration Contract Number GS07F0479N. Council Bill 1121-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to declare a 1988 Spartan fire truck vehicle identification number OD05JC1858888, a city-owned vehicle as surplus. Council Bill 1122-2022, a resolution authorizing the Fleet and Facilities Manager to purchase 2 gravel attachments for the backhoe loader from Martin Equipment in Rock Island, Illinois, for the amount of $28,190.
Your Honor, I move for the approval of consent agenda.
Second. No.
Motion by Alderman O'Brien, second by Alderman Waldron. Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
Your
None.
Honor,
Yes.
did we go out of order from how we were supposed to, or does that matter?
Oh, he's supposed to start.
I don't care as long as there's no legal concern.
Yeah, he's supposed to start the voting in the council meeting.
It's fine.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
She'll fix that for the next.
But you will make the point.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I'll always ask the stickler question.
Thank you.
Yes, you will. Thank you. Non-consent agenda, second reading ordinance. Council Bill 3016-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration of the Moline Code of Ordinance by repealing Chapter 2 in its entirety and acting in lieu thereof one new Chapter 2 dealing with the same subject matter.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Schmidt. Discussion. Yes, Mr. Went.
Thank you, and I appreciate, I was not here when this was on the cow. I was absent that night, so there are a few things. I do want to say thank you to staff, because a number of the things I did send in, they did incorporate, but there were a few things on this list that weren't, and I thought that merited a discussion. So I guess first, I'll move to reject the changes to 2-220A, which changed the number from a minimum of 3 meetings a month to 2 meetings a month.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion. Mr. Went.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I think that the move from 3 to 2, I can understand and maybe accept for December, just because of the holidays and how things fall, reducing that particular month. But we have seen recently, even with having the work session kind of in the middle, that we wind up with work packages that are somewhere between 300 and 900 pages or whatever it's been over the last year or so. I really think that this is a bad idea because, one, you wind up running so many things through in an evening. We have now started fairly regularly bringing things up at the cow and then voting for them for final approval in the council meeting that same night. That has been something historically that this council has never done unless we voted for consideration, which would be 2/3 of us, so it would be something that would be a real reason to do it. Further, I think we run into some issues, and this gets into some other things regarding minutes and those sorts of things, because if you're only doing 2 a month, by the time the minutes get done and the next time you meet to discuss those things or whatever, if they're not being published in draft form, that, you could be 3-4 weeks or almost a month before those things get published. And so the transparency to our public, I think, is reduced. So I think keeping it to 3 is the best transparency for the public and is a work product that I think is manageable for the aldermen to be able to go through all of the materials and actually read everything that is provided to them, because we get the stuff late on Friday and are expected to be completely up to date on the stuff by Tuesday with all of our questions. And I think that this would just result in way too long of agendas.
Mr. Walden?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, the language says a minimum. So we could always, based on what staff believes, schedule 5 every Tuesday night. So we're only talking about semantics here, 2 versus his minimum of 3.
That is correct. And I would point out, you approved your calendar.
Correct. I have faith in the staff that if they need 3 or 4 meetings a month, they're going to let us know. I do not think we need to change the language. I think staff's done a good job in what's proposed, and I will stick with what's proposed. Thank you, Your Honor.
Along those lines, I think there was a reason that staff did this, right? I mean, there was a reason that they took it down to 2 meetings a month as I guess, if we had a lot of information for staff to get caught up, because it's not like we're not giving these guys enough to do. I mean, they got plenty to do. That's why I asked that question with the consultant tonight, because, sometimes consultants can say, hey, we're coming in and we're gonna do, and then the staff ends up picking up the ball. But I think it was done originally so staff could get a chance to catch up. We've had a pretty aggressive agenda here with this council, so I guess I agree with Alderman Walden.
Anything further? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Would you like me to do a roll call vote? I will do a roll call vote, just to be sure.
Alderman Schmidt?
Nay.
Williams?
Aye.
Macias? I'm sorry. Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Nay.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Nay.
Waldron?
Nay.
3 ayes, 4 nays.
That amendment doesn't, correct? That amendment doesn't pass. Got it. Moving on. I do want to say, I appreciate it being numbered as such and with very clear language.
Yeah. I am learning from mistakes in the past, so I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I
Mr.
appreciate
Wendt.
this as well.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
So the next one was, maybe I'll preface it, well, I'll just go through it. For 2-220E1A, move to strike at least 48 hours prior to the scheduled meeting unless such notice is impractical, and replace with as soon as practical.
A second.
Motion by Alderman Wendt, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion, Mr. Wendt.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as it comes to being remote, we've seen it works. People have the equipment, and there's been some modifications in this section regarding that. The way that it reads right now, it's 48 hours unless impractical. I don't know who makes that determination. Well, you could have let me know yesterday, but you let me know today, so we're not going to allow you to come in remote. I think by doing it this way, it's saying, hey, be courteous, let us know as soon as possible, but we're not going to deny you or give you the third degree if you want to call in, because we typically have staff. It's something that is much easier than it used to be. We've got the equipment, and so I think having that requirement of 48 hours is not appropriate.
Mr. Timian.
Thank you, Your Honor. My fear is that by removing a hard cutoff, we open ourselves up for, once again, arguing, well, it's practical, and then we're still back in that same boat. At least with a 48-hour cutoff, there is I guess just a really hard cutoff that makes it a go or no go.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
Question for Margaret. is this a requirement that we're allowed to change, or is this something we're required under the OMA?
It is a requirement that you may change.
Okay. Is there a second question? Is there any concern with the language as soon as practicable? Does that create as soon as I know I'm leaving, I have to turn around and notify, even if it's weeks in advance? I mean, I guess I am understanding, but I'm also concerned that this is just as vague and just as setting it up.
I have a question related to knowing if we have a quorum or not. It would appear to me that the reason for a hard time is so that if for some reason there's no quorum, we have time to cancel the meeting according to whatever rules, or no?
That is correct, because remember, you need, under normal circumstances, a quorum in person. So that is not your COVID remote rules, but you are correct. And additionally, I believe it is also just to ensure that equipment can be in place and other, administrative measures are made available.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Yeah,
Nguyen.
and to that point, I think the reason the 48 hours historically was exactly equipment. I mean, before we did all this and we're recording our meetings, we had a couple of times where people tried to do remote and it was a complete cluster. I mean, the dial in, people, you couldn't hear anybody. It was that clearly, we are in a different world now. And so trying to get equipment, it's all here. It works, drop of a dime. I'm assuming it doesn't take very long to set any of this up, or any extra time, for anybody to jump in. And so I understand what you're saying, and so, but I don't think that it makes it any worse than what we've got right now. I think it just, so we don't wind up having this weird issue where somebody tries to make an argument that says, well, you should have told us yesterday.
Okay, thank you.
You may not have known it. Yeah.
Mr. Timian.
Just to go on this, does the Open Meetings Act require a certain time period to cancel a public meeting?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
I think as I look at it, the Opens Meeting Act is also fairly restrictive in what we're allowed to call in for. Travel for work, illness, and I think that is obviously where we run into that unless such is impractical, right? You're exposed to COVID that day, I would really rather you not come in. And it was not practical to know that ahead of the time. So
That's fair.
I just think as we look at that, having a deadline of when that expectation makes sense, and without a deadline to it, I think it allows for more game playing the other way, so I wouldn't want to change it.
Great. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias. Oh, I did it again. I guess I want him to be. Alderman Nguyen,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Nay.
Waldron.
Nay.
4 ayes, 3 nays.
This amendment passes.
The amendment fails.
Number 3.
Move to codify the requirement that draft minutes be published along with the next meeting agenda for the public to review prior to being adopted by council.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Alderman Nguyen, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion. Mr. Nguyen.
I think that this is for public transparency is really important. I think it needs to say draft, it needs to have draft all over it and everything. But with where we are, it is great that it is recorded and people can watch it, but if it's 3 hours plus, might be more if we have only two meetings a month, being able to go in and do a keyword search and kind of see, hey, what's going on, or look at the important thing, so that, because oftentimes there's something that's talked about at this meeting and then talked about and finalized at the next meeting, and being able to have the public be able to read through that and at least have an idea of what's going on, I think is transparency at its best.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I thank you. So I'd like to see this actually apply to committees as well. I mean, I think it'd be great to be able to see the draft minutes of committees. It's very difficult to keep up with what committee's going. You don't get to see their minutes for a month at a time, and it just, I mean, I think it's helpful to be able to see that. And
Okay, I have a question about that simply because I have run into, having to look at bylaws for different committees. Some committees don't have bylaws, and what supersedes this city council, our city code supersedes a bylaw, et cetera, for a committee. Could you weigh in on that confusion?
Well, you are right, Your Honor. There are some committees where they have their own bylaws which regulate when minutes are released. I would not recommend changing that. In addition, as our staff committee, when we looked at this, our concern is more about ensuring that the minutes are correct. And we certainly do not want to release draft minutes, which may incorrectly state what happened at the meeting. So the opportunity for review as opposed to an early posting seems appropriate to us as staff.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen?
I think the public policy benefit of transparency to the public is much more important, because they have to be done for us to review on the intranet and published at that time, so that we have time to review it before. So it's done, again, plaster draft all over the thing, and that makes it clear that these aren't the permanent record. We have to vote on it at the next meeting. I think that the concern that somebody may read something on a draft thing and think that that's the permanent thing, versus our residents being able to really kind of see what's going on and keep up with things without having to watch through a 3-hour meeting is a much more important public policy approach.
So to be clear, you just made a comment, you haven't made a motion to include the committee things. So we just wanted to be clear, we were discussing two different things. Yes. Sir Schmidt.
With the concern for accuracy, that is just that council has that first chance to review to ensure that accuracy prior to it moving forward. That's the concern.
Correct.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Mr. O'Brien?
Just a comment, I mean, staff, they could put this stuff out here, but we're making the assumption, I guess, with the idea of transparency, that the public's gonna see it. I don't know how many times that stuff has been in the newspaper. It's been, I can point to, my wife is on the school board, and I know I'm getting in the weeds here, but Erickson School, when that whole thing was going down, and they're moving people, it was in the paper for, and people were like, well, I never heard anything about it. Yeah, I think it's great that we want to have transparency, but I don't know that this is gonna, help with people, being, this new thing we're doing here might help with that. I personally don't know that that's gonna help either. But, it's something that, we're gonna do this on the idea that people are gonna either watch the council meeting, and I don't know that we have any statistics to see who watches the council meetings, but to know what's going on. generally, it's a NIMBY type of thing. I think people don't, as a rule, are really paying a whole lot of attention until it's something that's coming in their neighborhood and they have to be made aware of it. And I don't know that this is gonna, I just don't see how this, I mean, I guess if they're interested in that issue, they're gonna take the time and get a hold of us, but otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Schmidt?
Are draft minutes subject to a Freedom of Information Act request?
Yes. Well, you know, if they're posted, then they probably are. Otherwise, they are a draft. And they're not yet final, so they would not be.
So
But
typically under the Freedom of Information Act, draft documents are not considered
Correct.
foiable?
Correct,
What, even drafts of a work plan or anything that I'm
Right.
preparing?
right.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Wood?
Now, that doesn't mean that we can't release those. I mean, FOIA is a protection that's given to, that we can electively do or not do. This council, well, not this sitting council, but the council before, we had voted to be as liberal as possible when it comes to the FOIA to get information out there. And so, you know, that might be something where, like, you know, but to the point, if it's already posted, then why would you need to FOIA? And it's gonna take 5 business days to get it out, and I think our policy, which is something else we need to talk about, our policy right now is to wait that full 5 days, even if you have the documents already, to wait until the end of the statutory time. And so I don't wanna lean on FOIA for letting the public know what's going on.
I just want to correct that. That's not our policy, to wait
That's
the
what I
5
was
days.
told by the FOIA officer.
By Amanda?
Yep.
No, she gets us out as quickly as possible.
Well, that's an issue for her
Yeah.
supervisor to talk with her about that.
It's-
Yes, Mr. Waldron, and then our council.
Once again, I have faith in staff. They've made a recommendation to us. I trust Margaret's recommendation. I think we should go with it. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Ms. Costa?
I have
Nothing further?
nothing more.
All right. Hearing nothing else, if you don't mind, let's just do roll call today, since we have so many. Roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt?
Nay.
Williams? Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Nay.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Nay.
Waldron?
Nay.
Thank you. Number 4?
Add that meetings must be posted on the website to 2201B.
Second.
All right, motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Timian. Discussion?
I just think that anything that is required to be posted, I have no idea why we wouldn't also post it on our website.
21st century.
Yeah.
It's the 21st century amendment.
It was something I suggested, but it was
Okay.
recommended to keep the status quo.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who was the second on that?
Timian?
Jimmy?
Thank you.
Alderman Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Waldron?
Aye.
7 ayes, no
There you
nays.
go. That one was easy.
I could have
Don't
done
get
a
used
voice
to it.
vote for that.
Don't get used to it, though.
Okay. Moving to number 5.
So for 2-2201C, add that these shall be digital or electronic copies. Add that this will be provided to anyone who requests to be on the list, and strike the requirement that the media must file an annual request.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Second, motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Moyer. Mr. Moore, was that a hand as well? Or no?
No.
Any further comments? Mr. Went?
Yeah, I mean, the purpose for this is the information going out to that distribution list of, of media outlets or whatever, the requirement on it basically is a newspaper or a TV station or a radio station, but there are bloggers, there are other things, so anybody who requests it should be able to get it. That there are electronic and digital copies, there's not any cost to us to send out the distribution list to them. And this weird requirement that we have, and that probably is a historic thing where, hey, do you still want it? And maybe even when they were giving out physical copies of these things or something like that and mailing them out, understandable. But in today's world, you know, as a policy, from time to time, if you get a bounce back that email is no longer around, that blog isn't, you know, take them off the list. But I think that this is an appropriate for our media partners and to get the information out to the public.
Thank you. Ms. Kostopoulos?
So that language is statutory. So that is why it's in there.
But as a home rule, we don't have to require
Correct.
them.
I'm simply saying that it's in there because it's statutory. It is, I believe, designed to address media who make their annual requests so that they don't have to, you know, make monthly or weekly requests. It does not preclude anyone from making an annual request or to, you know, just on any particular meeting, ask for a copy of a schedule of meetings. It's just simply a reiteration of statute.
Okay. Mr. White?
Yeah, and it's just as a reminder, this is under the annual notice of regular meetings. I mean, it's not
Right.
something that's going to be done every week or every 2 weeks. I mean, get the information out, make sure that the public has it.
Okay. All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Yay.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay, that motion passes. Moving on.
Thank you, Honor. That special meetings shall be posted on the main page of the website. Notice to alderpersons shall be via email, text, and voice until confirmation is received by the clerk.
So you're wanting to add that to, add another number?
So,
'Cause,
well, no, this is basically, I didn't have the.
Another letter is what I meant?
I hadn't drafted I said basically this would be direction to staff to come back with language that meets this. How about that?
What is your motion? I'm just
Okay,
trying to
my
decide.
motion is to
well,
direct-
Hang on, Mr. Wen. I'm just trying to decide if you're adding another letter to this section 2-2202. Or where is this supposed to fit in?
So let me do this, because I hadn't drafted, because it's somewhat complicated of how this is actually going to work. So I want to say, let's direct staff to come back with language that includes special meetings to be posted on the website. Notice to all the persons shall be via email, text, or voice, or until confirmation is received by clerk. And they can draft the language and bring it back for our approval.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second, sure.
Seconded by Alderman Moyer. Discussion? Mr. Wen.
Because special meetings can be called within 48 hours, I think that so that people don't have to go through and be monitoring our agendas and when they're posted and all those things, that if it's on the main page of the website, I think one that clears that up so more people will know about it. I also, the other requirements here are somewhat important because of B, which I'm going to, in a minute, ask to strike completely. If you read through B, it basically says if half of the council shows up at that special meeting with just a 48-hour notice, they can vote to compel another alderman to show up regardless of where they're at or for whatever reason. And if that alderman doesn't show up, they can expel them from the council by vote that night, which is insane to me. But I think because it's only a 48-hour notice, I think it's really important that we make sure that the aldermen know about it as well.
Anything further? Ms. Kosopoulos?
I just have a question. So your direction appears to be that we draft language which requires notice to other persons via email, text, and voice until confirmation is received. So do you see that as first a voicemail, second an email, third a text, or?
I was leaving up to staff for you guys to come up, because right now what it says is, because we took out that the police are going to serve notice to us, it just said it shall be the duty of the clerk to provide to the members of city council. I'm just trying to help make sure that that happens in a timely fashion, because you could theoretically have a situation where, well, I sent an email and 2 days later it comes by if the alderman hadn't checked things or whatever and not known about the update.
I have Mr. Vitas, then Mr. O'Brien, then Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah.
A point of order, is the motion in order? Can we make this motion while we're in the middle of another motion?
We're not.
We're not.
We are, we're in the
We're
motion
amending.
to
Oh.
approve the section.
Yeah, theoretically you can, but.
Well, that is why I was trying to
Yeah.
parse out if you are saying this is related to B, so what
Well, it's
there's,
related, but it is a separate motion,
Yeah,
and as long as we're good, that was my only question.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Vitas?
Just real quick on this, I think I know where you're trying to get to, and it's common, very common in other cities to have that ability to have residents or businesses or the newspapers, or anybody for that matter, anywhere in the world who wants to follow your meetings, that typically they could actually subscribe to our website, which they do. The difference is when they subscribe to our website, they receive notification that there is a meeting, right? But they don't get the agenda. Our system doesn't allow for that yet. So the question is does Granicus have the capacity to do it as it does in other cities, where you can sign in, you can actually be notified by email that there is a meeting that has popped up. You can pick which meetings you want, whether it's city council, planning commission, zoning boards, whatever the case may be, park board, library board. And then what happens is you're able to log in, you click on it, and then you have the whole agenda and all the backup. So that's very common practice elsewhere, but we're not doing that currently.
Okay,
So you know.
thank you. Mr. O'Brien?
I was just gonna, in what scenario, does this happen a lot? Where we have a pop-up meeting and nobody shows up? I mean, we only have a few aldermen show up to it. I mean, this is a scenario describing, is it a common thing? Or I'm just curious, does it happen a lot? Is it something that might happen? Is it something that, an alderman could get expelled? Is the alderman expelled from the meeting or just from that meeting? If the meeting that he doesn't show up to?
Well, can you hold that thought, because that was something he was gonna bring up
Okay,
later, so
all
we'll
right.
keep it focused on this
All right.
particular one, but Mr. Schmidt, and then I think Mr. Timmons?
I am generally fine with this. I think removing for a special meeting the notification from the police, though disappoints my small children, is makes sense to move on. I think there's a way and a methodology to do that. I do agree. We don't have that exact piece. I think that simply an email, a voicemail, and a text message probably suffices. I am a little concerned about until confirmation is received by the clerk, or perhaps direction to follow up within certain timeframes or that sort of thing. I agree with a 48-hour meeting and the ability for people to call a special meeting. Having a strict mechanism in place does make sense. So I wanted to say that, though I So, and then a question, more for IT. Is it practical at this time to post to the main page of the website for a special meeting?
I'm sorry.
Can you say it again?
Yeah.
Is it practical at this time to post a notice of a special meeting to the main page of the website?
Yeah, it would go.
Excellent.
It would go on the calendar, and in that instance, also as a news flash. So yeah,
Perfect, thank you.
People sign up to get notifications of meetings in the category and news flashes in the categories they sign up for. That's
Thank
an
you.
ability on the website.
I just did not want to codify something we couldn't do.
Yeah, Mr. Timian.
I was just really echoing Alderman O'Brien. I just want to make sure we're not, we don't have a solution in search of a problem. Like, I don't know if this is a real occurrence or not, or if this is really even worth moving on.
Okay, Mr. Wayne.
But, and I hope it would never be an issue, but there's lots of stuff in here that probably never happened. But we do it because then we have rules and then there's not issues when there aren't rules.
Okay. Mr. Moore.
I was basically gonna say the same thing. You know,
Okay.
you have to prepare for what could happen as opposed to.
Okay. So before I call for the vote, can you please restate what this motion is? Because,
We're just moving to direct staff to come back with language regarding 2202, in which special meetings will be posted on the main page of the website, and notice to alderperson shall be via email, text, and voice until confirmation is received. And when they come back with the language, we can wordsmith it.
okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams, Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Nay.
Waldron,
Nay.
4 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, thank you. Continue, please.
So, for 2-2205, strike B in its entirety, which states, so that everybody knows what it says, a majority of whole number of members of the city council shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a lesser number may convene from time to time and compel absent members to attend any regular meeting or special meeting by written citation to that effect, stating that the day and hour of the meeting. The citation shall be signed by the mayor or the alderpersons issuing it, and may be served by the chief of police or any other authorized to serve process in the city by reading the citation to the absent member of the city council. Any alderpersons who willfully fails to obey the citation may be expelled, and his office may be declared vacant by a majority vote of the city council.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second.
Motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion. Mr. Went.
Yeah, I just think that this is a weird, archaic thing that, like, if one of us was at the, something that was very important to them and their family and was not at a meeting, that the alderman could vote to send a citation over to them, and if they didn't show up, all the people who had elected that person basically vote doesn't count. They are, it's declared vacant and they lose their seat. I'm not even sure how this would work for due process of an elected official, but it just seems like a weird thing to have in the ordinance.
Yes, Mr. O'Brien.
That actually happened the last time I was on the council. And we didn't expel him, but he didn't show up at all for a lot of meetings, so. he
And
should
that
have
was
been.
why you compelled him.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Waldron.
Isn't this a case of what we've seen in the news lately with legislators taking off to other states and not showing up on purpose to be able to force a non-vote or a vote? I may have argument with the technique, but I understand the process behind it.
Mr. Timian.
Yeah, my fear is that by removing this, we remove all mechanisms to expel a delinquent or intentionally absentee member of the body, which we need JIC.
Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And if we want to modify A, which is titled excessive absenteeism, 100%. I think that that's where it goes. The one below it, they just happen to not show up to one meeting for whatever reason. And if there was animus towards that person, they could just vote them out of office for missing one meeting. That I hear what you're saying as well, to try to avoid, but again, that would be if this happened repeatedly or something like that. I think under A would be where we'd want to do it. This unilateral thing where it's just one meeting and less than the whole council votes, a majority of them says you're out and you've lost the seat. That seems undemocratic.
Mr. Williams?
It seems unlikely that you could miss one meeting, the council, whoever showed up could issue that writ, and that the cops could then find and to serve it at the same time to show up at the meeting.
Well,
So I don't even know if it's physically possible.
Also,
Unless you're real fully fleeing.
could you clarify, I mean, there is a minimum or a maximum number of absences allowed. So the case that, taking a vote after one absence is not likely, if I understand this correctly, simply because there's another part of the code that protects someone from that, because we have a maximum number of absences.
Well, you are correct, Your Honor. Of course, we have to read both A and B in conjunction with each other. And B is really designed, as Alderman Waldron, you pointed out, and Alderman O'Brien, you experienced, the willfully absent person and the ability to compel or an admittedly extreme sanction. But you also forget that you are relying on the reasonableness of a majority of your council. So it's not as if, Alderman Schmidt can just decide that's what we're doing, and so it will be. It is the body that will do it.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, then Mr. Toomey.
Yeah, is there, I would presume that absences for reasons allowable under, are there any absences that would be exempted, or that the OMA exemptions only apply for virtual attendance, they do not apply
Right.
for that absence? I still think that relying on that reasonableness and on the fact that anyone who would make this decision would also have to suffer the consequences of any voters. That's a pretty serious piece of business, and I think that you said there are circumstances where it's warranted, and I don't have a problem with the ordinance as it is.
Mr. Toomey.
I think the confusion is in the language. One reading of this is to say, hey, we need a majority of, we need a quorum in order to meet, but occasionally a majority doesn't show up. Therefore, we need to compel them. And I think that's the original intention. But in how we read it now, it says, hey, from time to time, a bunch of guys get together and want to compel everyone else to show up. And that isn't, I don't think that's the intention, but that is one way to read this. And so I guess I'm asking for clarity. If, if three of us want to get together and set up a special meeting on our own and then compel everyone to attend, versus we all show up Tuesday night and there's only 4 of us here, so therefore we're going to compel people to show and then declare them having vacated. And those are very different scenarios. Understanding we need 48 hours ahead of time, scheduling meetings and whatnot. So I think the confusion is in time, we convene from time to time. What does that mean? Thank you for the.
Yes? Do you have an answer, Ms.?
Answer.
Okay.
Usually time to time means occasion.
Are they saying that they meet or that occasionally a lesser number is what is present?
Yes, it is a lesser number may convene and compel absent members. And it's really about the group who, in protest or whatever the case may be, absence themselves willfully to avoid business.
Mr. Nguyen?
And I think to Alderman Timian's point, that if we've got something that is vague or not completely understood or whatever, and one of the things, the end result is somebody winds up losing their elected seat. So if you vote this down, then clearly I'm hoping that staff will come back to clarify and work through this. I mean, the excessive absenteeism, all they do is they get fined with for what they get paid. I mean, it just reduces what their payment. I agree. Excessive absenteeism probably should be something more than that, and within that there should probably be some teeth to the ordinance. But the bottom one is theoretically it could just be one miss. You're at a funeral and you say, I am not leaving here to go to that special council meeting that you served. And now, granted, again, just like we talked before, what are the chances of it happening? Fairly limited, but it's there. I mean,
Okay,
Your Honor,
yes.
it says may be expelled, not shall be
Yeah.
expelled. We're in the weeds.
Well, I think that unless there's anything new to add, I will call for a vote at this point.
Alderman Schmidt?
Nay.
Williams?
Aye.
Went?
aye.
Timian?
Nay.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Nay.
Waldron?
Nay.
3 ayes, 4 nays.
Okay, number 8. Oh, before we start, maybe I could suggest we keep the short or slang, like abbreviations to a minimum. JIC, the public may not know. That means just in case, and I think I heard NIMBY twice today, and that means not in my backyard, right? But we
You're gonna hear
probably
a
should.
lot more of it after his thing passes.
Well, I'm just suggesting that maybe we refrain and we just
Everybody will
say the
know.
whole thing.
Voice note.
All right, next up.
For 2-2207, clarify that this is for regular meetings and not cow meetings.
Was this
It's
in
the
B?
order of business.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I
got
guess
it.
to modify, we
Yes,
modify
Mr.
A that says this is for regular council meetings of the city council.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Don't we need a second?
What?
Yeah.
Second.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Lord, that was Wendell.
Was that a second?
Schmidt.
Yes,
Thank
that
you.
was a
Thank you.
You're sure
Discussion.
about that?
I'm sure.
Okay.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Sorry. Mark this a little bit too. Alderman Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams? Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Nay.
Waldron?
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay, next, please.
For 2-2207C1, insert a space between B and recessed. Just clean it up.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Timian. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Kostopoulos.
So this, as we've said before, this is a printing issue. When it is published, there will be spaces.
Okay. Would you like to withdraw that motion? Mr. Went?
Sure, I'll withdraw the motion if it's going to be fixed.
Okay. Thank you. Please continue.
All right. So for 2-2212, add except by leave of the chair.
after question, and add shall not restrict or limit a member from making motions as outlined in this chapter.
So if I understand it, let me read it the way you want it to read.
Sure.
No member of the city council shall speak more than twice on the same general question on the council agenda, nor more than once on a previous question, except by leave of the chair. No person in the gallery shall speak on a subject more than once except by leave of the chair, and nor restrict or limit a member from making motions as outlined in this chapter.
That actually
You
would be
want
before
that
the
before
gallery.
that last sentence about the gallery.
Yeah.
I tried to get it right,
No.
so we'd have it right. Okay,
Got all the words.
all right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Williams. Discussion. Yes, Mr.
I think
Moore.
this is just kind of a cleanup. I mean, that, one, you should be able to make motions, because otherwise technically I'd be violating this, the ordinance right now by making multiple motions.
I was just gonna say that.
Because I think that that's what the intent is. And two, that we allow a leave of the chair for the public to speak multiple times. If there's a situation where it makes sense and merits it, having a hard cutoff and like, whoa, no, you can't, I think is a mistake.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, no, it's the practice we follow, it makes sense. However, under the current ruling, the ability to make a motion would supersede that section, right? And I'm fine with it being codified, a little redundant, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that properly.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
Okay. Hearing no more discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
I,
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye, actually.
Waldron,
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
Okay. Next.
Some of these I gotta remember. For 2-2215, reject suggested change, but instead strike if required by the chair and replace with by the clerk and be published in the minutes.
So, shall I try reading how you want it to read?
That would be true. Or do you want me to?
No motion shall be put or debated unless it is seconded. When a motion is seconded, it shall be stated by the chair before debate. And the clerk, and be by the clerk and will be published in the minutes. Now, I think you better take that one. It's not making sense.
So we're striking. Strike. Yeah.
The strikeout, so
we'll
keep it.
We'll just read, says, no motion shall be put or debated unless it is seconded. Then a motion, when a motion is seconded, it shall be stated by the chair before debate, and every motion shall be reduced to writing by the clerk and be published in the minutes.
Second.
All right, motion by Alderman Went, second by Alderman Timian. Mr. Timian.
My understanding of the concept, and I'm no lawyer, but I did Google this. Reducing something to writing requires actually providing the whole context of said motion, background, et cetera, which is separate than just recording the motion in the minutes, which we already do. So is there, can you describe, what does reducing to writing mean? Because it feels like we already, the clerk already records every motion in the minutes.
So in this context, I am not sure, which is one reason we recommended striking it. The motions do get recorded in the minutes. And they are, of course, recorded on our recording.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
So what's the,
Yeah, where is that in the ordinance?
Well,
that
they
happens.
appear in the minutes.
I understand that that's what our practice is, but that's not anywhere in our ordinance that happens. And so that's where I'm just trying to say,
So is that-
this would be the place.
So I have a question, I understand. Sorry, I'm cutting you off, Mr. West. I understand what you're saying. Is it really just a question of that's what the professional standard is for clerks? It's some, and that's why it doesn't appear in our code? I don't know.
Is that part of Robert's?
I guess I'm not really sure how to answer that question. Obviously, the minutes are a summary and a written summary and recording of the business of the council. Is that in our ordinance? No, but it is proper minutes.
I don't see a problem with adding
Yeah,
the
let's just
language
go
that's gonna
Thank you.
happen.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Because the objective here, as I understand it, is that a motion is recorded verbatim. That's really the objective. We could talk about whether we're using that right languages, but that's the objective.
Well, and also that there is no other place anywhere in the ordinance that actually says that that's going to happen. And so this would be the appropriate place, I think, to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Kostopoulos.
So, do you mean to say that all motions will be recorded in the minutes or appear in the minutes verbatim?
Say that
Or
again?
verbatim,
I don't think I say verbatim anywhere here.
well, I'm,
I said verbatim.
yeah. So is that what you mean,
Well,
or?
I think it's what our current practice is.
So are you,
He's ju-
are you codifying? our
Codifying
Our
current
current
practice,
practice,
that's
yes.
how to
Okay.
interpret his motion.
All right.
So what-
Any further
so
discussion?
what is the motion specifically?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
So I guess I don't have a problem with what we're trying to accomplish. I don't know that the motion is the right language, is my concern. Where it's, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and speak at the same time. As the part that remains in here, should be stated by the chair before debate. It really is just a second sentence that would then go on to say, all motions shall be recorded in the minutes as stated. Or is that what we're trying to get to?
Yeah, I
I can
guess
reread it.
maybe a suggestion, you could refer this amendment to staff and ask them to come back with the language.
Just like in number 6.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, I would make a motion to ask staff to review this alongside the recommendation earlier this evening for future review.
Second.
Second by Alderman Nguyen. Discussion on that? No, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
That was 2 nays,
Okay.
5 ayes.
And those names were Alderman O'Brien and Waldron?
Yes.
Okay.
So it heads back to staff, which
Correct.
means the motion on the floor is withdrawn or not?
No, it's
It just went away.
sent off to them.
All right, so I don't need to take a vote. Okay. Number 12.
For 2-22, 16A, 3, add in parentheses indefinitely or until a time certain, which is the lay on the table motion.
Motion by Alderman Nguyen, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion? I have a quick question. Oh, sorry, is that again? Quick question. So to lay on the table indefinitely, if that language was added, is that different than to postpone indefinitely in number 5?
Yeah.
1 second. get legal opinion first.
I would say that because they appear separately, there was an intent for a separate definition, but
Okay.
I'm not sure what it
Thank you.
is.
Mr. Nguyen.
I think in common usage, when you lay it on the table, it could always be voted back off of the table, where postpone indefinitely was basically just to put it in a rat hole and get it away forever. But when you talk about parliamentary procedure, typically there is, when you lay something on the table, it is either for a time certain or indefinitely. And I think we've run into that before. I think we had a question with the landscaping stuff, that it was laid on the table indefinitely. So it doesn't automatically come back unless we as a body vote to bring it back.
Mr. Schmidt.
Right, and from my perspective, that's what to lay on the table means. It has those two options already inherently present. So I don't know why we're calling that out.
Well, because I was told that we're not Robert's rules. That we technically have not adopted Robert's rules. And while that is normal in Robert's rules, that's not what ordinance says.
All right.
Okay. All right, hearing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer.
Aye.
I'm sorry, was that aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Alderman O'Brien,
Nay.
Waldron,
Nay.
4 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, number 13, please.
Sure, for, and this is under reconsideration of motions, sorry. Under reconsideration of motions, strike, quote, and seconded, and strike the member and replace with a member.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Timian. Could you please read how you'd like it to be stated then?
Sure thing. It says, a motion may be reconsidered at any time during the same meeting.
That's A.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. Yeah. It says, a motion to reconsider must be made by a member who voted in the majority or by those who were absent and did not vote upon the motion to be reconsidered.
So you want to take out
The second.
and seconded. Okay. Mr. Timian.
This is, we're talking Robert's rules. This is standard in that paradigm, that only the original motion needs to be made by someone who voted in the majority for reconsideration. So this is kind of, what we're doing is unique. And so I just found that earlier.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Went.
Yeah, and to that point, and this is why Robert Rule did it, because otherwise, in a body like ours, you would then have to get two people to change their mind. And if you had a vote that swung by one vote, and then they all of a sudden realize, oh, I made a mistake, they can move for reconsideration. But if you have to have two of them, then it defeats the purpose of what typically in all organizations I've ever been a part of, the reconsideration approaches.
Thank you. Right, hearing no further, Mr. Schmidt.
I just think reconsideration, especially in the votes we work on, can be very serious, and I have no problem with the higher threshold.
Okay, Mr. Went.
Sometimes this comes up where new information becomes, but you can only do it at the next meeting or those sorts of things.
Same.
But
If the new information is not swaying two people who are either absent or voted, then I just think that's
Anything further? You're done? Or not?
I think the higher bar is
Okay.
where I'm comfortable. Thank you.
Okay. Hearing none, no further discussion, roll call, please.
Sorry. Okay. Alderman Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Nay.
Waldron?
Nay.
4 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, that doesn't pass. Next one.
This is under publication and effective date of ordinances, under 2304A1, add, it shall be published on the city website.
Bringing that into alignment.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Timian. Discussion, Mr. Wine.
Yeah, this talks about them being published in book and pamphlet form and published by authority of the city council. I think in the 21st century, it should also be on our website.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion. Mr. Schmidt. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just beg a little time to read and make sure I'm understanding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually,
Because as I'm reading that, section A says to be in one of the following forms. So we're putting that where the website is now one of those available forms, but it could also just be put in the newspaper. Is that,
Is that accurate, Margaret?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's actually a good
Mr.
point.
Timian?
I, in hindsight, I don't disagree that it should be on the website, but I do recall that when I came on, I was not seeing reflected ordinances on the site for 2 months.
Long time.
And so the 10-day threshold is an issue if that is our sole. So we will still continue to have to make pamphlets or, put it in the paper or whatever we want to do. But adding this, I don't know if it hurts anything.
Okay. Anything further? Mr. Schmidt?
How are we typically complying with this?
Doesn't this go through the,
I'm sorry, what did he ask?
how are we typically complying with this?
It's just something that I started doing because it was taking a little bit longer. We did go to American Legal and ask them to, at Bob's direction, codify those as quickly as possible. A lot of municipalities I've spoken with do it twice a year, which is really surprising. We want that done as soon as possible. So as soon as it passes, I send those to American Legal, and then they put together what they call a supplement. And so they wait till they have a few, but they don't wait more than 2 weeks at Bob's direction. And then in the meantime, those are placed on the website under recently approved or adopted
That's it.
ordinances. And that is something that I just started doing, I think, in the last
you.
year.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Waldron?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
Thank you. Next, number 15.
So this is under balanced budget, implementation and restrictions, add elected members after the and before city council.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Seconded by Mr. Moyer. Do you have a question? You look very puzzled.
But, yeah, well, I guess I don't understand why we would need to put the words elected members in. City council is city council, right?
Yes, Mr. White.
Well, I had asked this at one point in the past, and I didn't get a clear answer on whether, if there was only 6 people here, is it 2/3 of the 6 people that were voting? Or is it 2/3 of the entire elected, who happened to be there that night or whatever? And I think it was just to clarify, you have to have 2/3 of all the elected.
You still look confused. Mr. Timian and then Mr. Schmidt.
My fear is that this precludes or it disqualifies appointed members of the council from voting on this. And so that's why I don't think it's a the proper language.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Schmidt?
I agree with that legal interpretation
Yeah.
and
Mr. White?
So I'll make amendment to the amendment of sitting rather than elected.
Okay.
Because there's majority of the sitting city council.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Schmidt? Oh, that was a stretch.
No.
Oh.
Was there a second to that?
Not yet?
Okay. Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
Once that dies, I have a question.
Okay,
Or
so
second.
that amendment to go to sitting fails for lack of a second. Mr. Schmidt?
I understand the intent, but I think this also comes back to the now an individual could, on their own, an individual could be absent and compel now the inability to move forward with approving a budget. I think it's by requiring the entirety of the sitting city council, it allows a member to dodge. And I'm not willing to put that risk in. It relates back to, like I said, I don't want to approve the budget, I'm just not gonna show up.
Well, it's an unbalanced budget. It's not just the budget.
I understand, but,
And from my standpoint, a threshold, and that's why we have a balanced budget, that it should be that to do something unbalanced, it's a higher threshold.
but and the math on reducing members doesn't reduce how many votes you need very quickly. I have to sit through that. So I think as a practical matter, we're adding problems where I don't think there is one.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, roll call, please.
I'm not sure there's a
Move the original.
Is there a
Yeah,
second?
Yes.
the original.
Was that all
Yeah,
right?
the Moyer
Yeah.
seconded the
Okay.
original motion,
Thank
number
you.
15. Yeah.
Alderman Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Nay.
O'Brien,
Nay.
Waldron,
Nay.
2 ayes, 5 nays.
Okay, that does not pass. Number 16.
For, I guess, vacancies in elected offices and filling a vacant alderman position with 2-3103 add with the advice and consent of council. Which,
And what letter or place?
wait, hold on.
Three.
By appointment.
Yeah, by appointment for, sorry, it's B2. Sorry about that.
Why am I not, oh, 3, got it.
31-3. I'll second that.
Motion seconded by Alderman Moyer. Discussion, Mr. Schmidt.
Margaret, I'd seek some guidance on legal meaning of advice and consent of the city council.
They have to agree. They can disagree with it. Like much
So it's
like
approval.
yeah,
Approval.
yeah.
Yes, Mr. Went.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of places through this where people are being appointed to library board, to different things, advised in the consent of the council. But I just find it that it's odd that there's not advice and the consent to fill a vacancy on the council. To have that be a unilateral right, when there's not a unilateral right to put somebody on other commissions, it seemed odd to me.
Ms. Kostopoulos.
So I believe this is by statute. This follows statute.
Okay.
But
Thank
we
you.
can, I mean, there's no requirement that we can't change that.
Correct.
Okay. Anything further? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Nay.
Waldron,
Nay.
3 ayes, 4 nays.
Okay, next one. 17.
Let's skip that. For 818, for 3201E5B, strike 100,000 and replace with 25,000.
Give us a second to get there, please. 3201. E
5B.
E 5 B. Okay. Approve any such contracts as may be presented by the city administrator for goods and or services that are reasonably necessary to respond to the emergency, notwithstanding any other requirements of the Code of Ordinances, provided the cost of said contract is less than, and you want it to say 25,000. So you want to bring down the threshold for emergency powers to spend money.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion?
One of the reasons, and I understand why it was probably originally 100,000, was because if there was an emergency, it would be tough to get people together, but now with special meetings, virtual options, different things, if there's a state of emergency that has been called, I think that it's appropriate to bring that number to 25,000.
Mr. Schmidt?
But a special meeting would take 48 hours, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So are you saying, I'm trying to understand your line of questioning, saying that if there's an emergency and there's something required that costs more than 25,000, you'd have to wait 2 days to get authority to do that? Am I understanding that line of thinking?
Yes, I'm trying to read and follow and understand.
Okay.
Because I do think there is as we've recently experienced, there's certainly a difference in a riot. And I don't want to stop the mayor from spending $50,000 on the buses we need to evacuate civilians compared to other emergencies. So that's why I'm sort of looking at that definition. And again, we're just asking a little time to review.
Yep. Yep. Do you have a question, Mr. Moore?
I'm just thinking though, but then why not $1 million?
That's,
I mean,
Yeah.
there's gotta be a number.
You're talking about emergency government, correct?
correct.
And there is a state of emergency that's been declared. Is that correct? In most cities, regardless of which state that I've worked in, there is no thresholds. When there's a state of emergency declared, whatever it takes, the mayor is empowered to make decisions in order to take care of the emergency. And at that time, the standard purchasing policies are suspended during the course of an emergency. So I think that is the norm. I mean, that's what I've seen everywhere. So this whole language probably predates, I don't know, all of us here, and goes back to a time when there was an emergency and they put it in place. But normally you suspend the purchasing policy during the state of a declared emergency, so that way it can be done, and then everything must be reported back to the elected body as it was expended. And that's pretty standard
That's
practice.
the checks and balance.
Yeah, it's a check and balance.
Okay.
It doesn't give you the carte blanche to simply go out and spend the money to spend the money. It gives you the ability to spend it, to address the emergency, that you are required then to report all expenditures back to the council. And that's pretty normal.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, I think that we would potentially hobble ourselves, and I understand that we also can open ourselves up to some inappropriate spending, but I also, at that same time, as Vitas stated, it would come back subject to council, and if someone was misspending that sort of money, they'd have to have that approval of the full council, or else, action could be pursued for consequence. So I just don't want to see us hobbling our ability to respond.
Okay. Anything further? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt?
Nay.
Williams?
Aye.
Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Nay.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Nay.
Waldron?
Nay.
3 ayes, 4 nays.
19?
So this one, maybe I'll prevent people from having to read too much. This one, the next two sections, it talks about the mayor having the ability to, in a state of emergency, closing liquor establishments, the sale of alcohol, intoxicating liquors, alcohol wholesalers, and those sorts of things. I move that we add cannabis to that.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion?
There's not a requirement that she has to, it becomes an option.
Got it. Anything further? Here, yes, Mr. Schmidt.
I'd like to propose an amendment, recreational cannabis.
Second.
All right. Yes, that's an amendment to the amendment.
I think as we look at that recreational versus medicinal use, that we could get into a situation where we're keeping someone from a pain medication, and I don't want to do that.
Okay, thank you. So on the amendment to the amendment, that it include, you have a question?
Just a question. Is this type of emergency where the mayor has had to shut down? I mean, does anybody have any data on that? When the last time in God's name that has ever happened? Ever?
Probably not.
But any riot would be a time when that would be the sort of thing you would use for. And I don't want us to have a riot, but I also don't want us to be ill-equipped to deal with one. Sorry, Chief, I keep talking about that.
Civil unrest.
Knock on some
Got
wood.
it.
So that, the answer to my question is no, it's never happened
At this point, yeah.
Shut the liquor stores down, you may start a riot.
All right, thank you.
what I'm thinking.
So roll call on the amendment to the amendment that includes recreational cannabis in the language.
Alderman Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams?
Nay.
Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Waldron?
Nay. There you go, Scott.
5 ayes, 2 nays.
All right, thank you. That amendment passes, and that finishes out that number, or do we need to go back?
you
We
gotta
need to go
go
back
one more.
to add. Oh, we do have to go back to adding it in general.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and also, there's also this,
That was the main motion.
Yeah, the main
Let's go
motion
back to
is
the
just
main motion real quick. And
well, no, I've got a question about 3201 E6. It says.
Yeah, but we're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have to finish out the cannabis one, so.
Oh, yeah, it's amendment.
Now,
Sorry about
so if there's no further discussion, or is there? Seeing none, roll call please on amending that section 3201E5 F and G to add recreational cannabis.
Alderman Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams?
Nay.
Went?
that. Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Nay.
Waldron?
Nay.
4 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, that motion passes. Now, number 20.
So, for this, I guess maybe it's just asking staff what this means. So it says a statement of emergency declared by the mayor in accordance with this section shall expire not later than the call to order adjournment of the first regular meeting of city council after a statement of emergency is declared revoked by the mayor.
It means at the next meeting, it can't last any longer than the next meeting?
Right.
It feels like that was already in
So-
place.
Right.
The call to order
Yeah.
adjournment, I guess.
I think that adjournment was meant to be strict.
Okay, I figured it was something along that lines, I just wanted to make sure that, so I guess I will move that you think that adjournment should be stricken? Then I move that we strike adjournment.
Hang on, I need a point of clarification for all of us. Was there a second to your original, what you've been brought
It
up
was
under
just-
number
this is
20?
it.
It was
This
just
is
a
it.
question.
Yeah, okay, got it,
It was a question, Margaret, of
got it.
what am I missing?
So what is your motion, Mr. Nguyen? please restate.
Well, Margaret said that she thought that adjournment should be stricken, so I move that we strike adjournment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Williams. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, I actually, unless there's a reason Margaret or anyone else has to offer, I think it makes sense to last until the adjournment of that next meeting, because at the call to order, we would end an emergency before we have the opportunity to extend it. My concern is that it needs to expire at the end of the meeting rather than the beginning. Otherwise, you fall into this weird, maybe 5 minute, maybe 3 hour period. Am I reading that right?
You know, I have to be honest, I do not recall how this was created or why.
I can't recall either, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So this sounds like it's a brethren to number 6 and number 11, if we're that unclear about what it is meant.
Yes, that would be a good solution.
So, Mr. Went, would you like to withdraw that and read?
Sure, I'll withdraw.
Okay.
I just, whatever
Yep,
staff thinks
yep.
is appropriate.
And I will make a motion to send this to staff to provide guidance on, so we'll not adopt this until staff comes back with it.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Alderman Williams.
Like 6 and 11, we're sending it to staff to.
Point of order. Yes?
Or just a comment?
Okay.
Just a normal one. So I guess, and that's fine to send it to staff, I have no problem with that. However, I also think we have to just make a decision. So I guess after we vote to send it on to staff, I would think we should just strike call to order for the time being. Strike the change, if staff comes back and says, no, we actually want that, so that we can move forward with approval and only be coming back on these
Right.
issues, not hold up
Yep.
the whole process.
Okay.
But
So first, we will vote on this motion to send it to staff. Can I have a roll call, please?
Sorry. Okay. Alderman Schmidt,
I
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
Okay.
Your Honor, I make a motion to strike the words call to order in
2.
23201
E6.
thank you, E6.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Alderman Schmidt, seconded by Alderman Timian. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. All right.
And I apologize, there's a couple additional ones that.
Call the
didn't make
question.
list, So.
Okay, Mr. O'Brien has called the question. I believe that we need a second for that.
Second.
Second by Alderman Waldron. And there's no discussion at a call to question, correct?
Correct.
Roll
I have a
call,
point of inquiry.
yes?
Just for clarification, when, in 2-110A, when it says the city of this is regarding getting indebtedness.
Can I,
What?
first I need that point of clarification. Are we allowed to consider a point of clarification during a call
No,
for
a
a
vote
question?
must be
Okay,
taken.
yeah, that's what I thought. I'm sorry.
That's not true.
So,
Point of inquiry is always.
roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Nay.
Went,
Nay.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Nay.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
3 ayes, 4 nays.
Okay, question is not called. Mr. Nguyen.
So, under the procedures followed in incurring indebtedness, it says that Moline acting by its city council with affirmative vote of 6 votes of its members may from time to time borrow money, blah, blah, blah. Is that 6 out of the 8 or is that 6 out of the 9?
That is 6 out of the 8.
6 out of the 8? Because I think there's some confusion on that.
Can you get a little
So
help on the
wait,
page?
what
Just for
section?
seeing Alderman
Wait,
Smith's
what?
face.
Excuse me, I need people to,
What
Ms. Costanza.
section is that?
yeah, remind us, please.
Sorry.
2-1110A.
Thank
Do
you.
you have a page number by chance?
It'd be page 4 of, well, the version I've got of 109.
2-11,
Okay.
I guess on the PDF, it's page 5.
Okay.
114.
1110. Procedures to be followed in incurring indebtedness.
And what subsection?
Just A.
It's that,
Well, I take it back. It says 6 of its members. And the members include the mayor.
Okay.
okay. Thank you. So now we are to the item, yes?
There's 2 more. So one more clarification, running while coordinate, for 2102C, and this is the nonpartisanship. I think you guys may have briefly talked about it. I was trying to listen to it but it says clarifying running while coordinating with a party. What does, with an affiliation with any political, what does that mean? Is that you just don't have an R, G, D, I next to your name on your signs? Or does that mean an affiliation like there's a party out there that has pictures of you and says, this is our guy, or this is our gal, or this is our whatever. What is that? How does that work? Is it just merely the sign thing? Because that's what it
So
said.
and we talked about this at some length. And it does not preclude an ideological affiliation. It does mean that you cannot say I am affiliated with the Independent Party or the Communist Party or the Republican Party.
But if you, like, and that's what I don't understand. If that party then took a picture of a group of you and said, this is our slate, and that was pumped out to the community, is that an affiliated with that group? Would you have to disavow it? Or is it just a one-way issue where if you're doing it, then it's an issue. If somebody else is doing it, go haul away.
Yes, I believe that is the case. So if a party wants to endorse you or support you or publish your picture, that is fine. It is that you cannot declare yourself as a candidate that is affiliated with any particular party.
Mr. Timian.
I think this also extends to how the ballots are constructed as well, because in a nonpartisan election, we don't have spaces for parties. So I think
Right.
that's kind of, along with self-affiliation, it's also the ballot structure.
Thank you. All right, another one?
Yeah,
Mr. Wynn.
and this is the last one, I promise. So one of the things that within here, in section 2-310, which is the oath that we take, by state statute, it basically just says that you have to swear to support the Constitution and of the United States and the Constitution of Illinois, and ours mirrors that. But Moline has historically always, and if you guys recall when you guys were sworn in, also includes support the Moline Code of Ordinances. And that's something that everybody who is sitting here and is elected made a vow to do is to support those ordinances. And so I'd like to amend the oath so that it actually reflects what the oath that all of us have taken and will continue to take moving forward.
Can you please restate the section number that is? Oh, the oath, 3102?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Schmidt. Discussion.
So what are we changing about the oath?
So, well, our ordinance is actually going to reflect what the oath that all of us have taken and done. I mean, Moline has always, as far as back as I can tell and talk with some other people who were elected before me, had within their oath that we would all make an oath, not only to the federal constitution and the state constitution, but also to support our local ordinances. And we just have always taken that extra step. It never got codified, but it should be codified because if we're cleaning it up and that's actually what we're doing, that's should be in there.
I have a question for the clerk. I mean, my oath is sitting in a drawer over there, so I could double check it. I believe what you're saying, but is that how you recall what is
Yeah.
on those printed copies?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't at that meeting. I was at my daughter's soccer game, but I listened to the whole thing, and every single one of the newly elected people
Yep.
gave that oath.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
Okay, that motion passes.
And thank you guys for your patience. I'm sorry I missed the cow meeting.
Okay, so now we must vote on this item number 14.01 as amended.
Thank you for that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays. That motion passes.
Okay.
First reading ordinances. Council Bill 3017-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 23 Parks and Recreation of the Moline Code of Ordinances by repealing Chapter 3 in its entirety and acting in lieu thereof. One new Chapter
Excuse me,
20.
clerk, could you please reread that? You said chapter 3.
I said 3.
I heard it as 3.
Chapter 23 in its entirety and acting in lieu thereof. One new Chapter 23 dealing with the same subject matter.
Thank you.
Council Bill 3018-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 16 Libraries of the Moline Code of Ordinances by repealing Chapter 16 in its entirety and acting in lieu thereof. One new Chapter 16 dealing with the same subject matter. And that is all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. Miscellaneous business, I do not have anything today. There's a lot going on, but I'll save it for the next meeting. We will see each other next Tuesday. Mr. Williams. Thank you. Mr. Went.
Thank you, Your Honor. Couple of things. One was at our strategic planning session last month, we talked about the South Moline Township Fire District issue that was outstanding, and staff was going to get back to us. Well, August 1st is when we have to give notice to them before August 1st of any possible changes. And so I didn't know if we had any update on that or...
I'm going to defer to the fire chief because I have not had any contact directly with the township. I mean, did anybody in the fire department have discussions with Moline, South Moline Township?
So,
There's more than one.
as just a refresher,
Just so bring it.
yeah, that's fine. We provide service to South Moline Township,
Correct.
unincorporated areas.
Correct.
And in return, there was an agreement that was signed years ago.
15 years ago.
That basically, I think it's somewhere around $40,000 that they pay the city that comes out of the South Moline Township coffers. When kind of doing the calculation, because they get the same amount of calls proportionately that the rest of the city, that's about 1/10 of what they probably should be paying.
And quite honestly, some of our residents that are Moline residents that pay South Moline, they're actually paying twice. They're paying into that coffer and also paying their city fees as well to cover the fire department. And so this was something, I don't know, probably 2019 that has kind of been sitting around. It's been brought up. This August 1st date has been hanging out there, and I hadn't heard anything, but it doesn't sound like we're probably.
I haven't
Chief, can you weigh in
met
on
my
anything?
office.
As I believe I reported at that meeting, that Ansel Blake and Dirk Price had taken on the discussions with the legal representation for the township, and
That's where it started and ended.
all interaction from the fire department stopped.
Yep.
Legal versus legal matter, council versus council discussion. So I have no idea
Okay.
where that topic
Okay.
was.
Could you please follow up, Ms. Casapos?
I will follow up, thank you.
Just with this question, would that include areas like I affectionately call it flower land? Well, I know it's not.
Fruit land.
I know that's not
That's
true.
exactly.
But it is fruit land, because, I mean, we have some pockets that we are slowly working forward with annexation. And these would be those territories that get services, or even don't get services, but are within the township, unincorporated, and they're paying, as you said, 1/10, or if it's 40,000, that's 400,000 they should be paying, is what you're suggesting, right?
Well, I think we did the math, and it was
Just checking.
somewhere close to.
Just
to that,
checking,
yeah.
make sure I got it right,
Yeah.
so, okay, all right. We'll follow up on that.
Yeah, and if we get, I mean,
With some
I know that we-
urgency.
yeah, what?
With some
With some urgency,
Ms.
because
Casapos.
basically it renews for another year if we.
Automatically renews, once we put them on
Automatically renews.
notice.
What?
Is there a notice provision that we can advise them that we're not automatically renewing? Again, I haven't seen
Well,
this
I
agreement
think you'd have to get that by August 1st.
by August 1st.
And so we've got 2 meetings, I think.
We got
before
2 meetings
We'll,
before that.
we'll
But
get
that's why I wanted to bring it
coordinated
up,
on it,
because
thank
We'll
you.
bring that back.
Okay. The other is, another thing that we talked about at that strategic was the grant related to the Arsenal letdown and that sort of thing. At the time, I think we were said, okay, we're good to go, we're going to make an application in September, but I heard through the grapevine that we may miss that September deadline.
Absolutely. Let me bring council up to date on that, because that's a discussion I had with the colonel, who is leaving, by the way, on Thursday for places overseas. He'll be replaced by Colonel Mitchell. So at least you know who the replacement is, starting on Friday. And he bid adieu to everybody, just so you know. He thanked the city for his support and all good things. There was a lot of discussion about moving this project forward too quickly. There is information lacking on the Arsenal side of the table, and there's information lacking on our side in terms of the engineering and the costs and the details. I think it was a joint kind of discussion as to postponing the application until next year, until we can gather the proper information to put together the appropriate application. We still don't even have the letter of support yet from the Arsenal. Supposedly it was drafted, it wasn't immediately forthcoming. So, and I think in part, it's postponed for a year, but not longer than that. And it's a question of the new colonel coming on board, putting together the appropriate letter, providing it to the city, and then the city taking the appropriate steps with its own engineering department and other departments engaged in this to actually prepare that application with the Roosevelt Group.
Mr. White?
Is there any concern, because what I had heard was
No.
that the city, I think maybe of Davenport, has got something in the works that they were going to make application under that same thing for next year, that now that we're not going to make ours, that we may be competing with Davenport in some kind of joint thing with the Arsenal. I just,
You mean like the Centennial Bridge, perhaps?
I don't know.
Something to do with that?
Not the Centennial, but probably the Government Bridge.
Government
would be my
Bridge.
guess. But I just, is there any way that we can throw whatever, because I know that we've talked about it, it's like whatever resources you need to get this in by September, can we, but if there's,
I was
I'll-
told from the military side, no.
Yeah, and I believe it's Matt Herman
Yeah.
with Riata and the Roosevelt Group is very clear on the quality of your application
Yeah.
matters. And so throwing something together, while I completely hear and understand the urgency, we certainly don't want to let an opportunity go by, but doing it the right way is going to weigh heavily in our favor.
I mean, we internally were moving forward with deliberation. There's no question about that. There's people in the room who were in those meetings. But the information they're lacking, coupled with the information we're lacking, makes it very difficult. I mean, we still have a study that's ongoing with regard to the condition of the deck, an update to the deck and the replacement of the deck. We still don't know whether the deck superstructure will support whatever the future military operations are, which have not been shared. You know, and there's really no specific design for the letdown structure. And that was a secondary part, but it was also a difficult part to qualify. So that's one of the reasons why it's another reason why I want to push it back.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
to the deck thing, because I think, is that like a $6 million,
The original
Was-
study that was done revealed a $6 million cost years ago.
and I think from that, and I think from our conversation in there was that
Yeah.
the colonel had indicated that there was a different, not the letdown grant, but some other grant that could help with the assistance that.
Outside of the DCIP, if I could.
Right, yeah, because
That could be.
I think we had communicated that we weren't real interested if we were paying the entire $6 million, but that if there could be something where they would pitch in a little bit, we would pitch in a little bit, but a grant would take over the vast majority of it. And I just didn't, I thought that was like a separate thing, and I didn't know, are we working on that grant, or?
That one, no. I mean, there was a
Do
lot.
you guys need resources to?
We always need resources.
So, yeah,
Honestly, Alderman, I mean, we do need resources.
Because we've talked many times about maybe getting a grant coordinator, hiring an outside consultant for grants and those sorts of things.
We have one grant writer we're working on the stormwater management issues related to the Illinois 92 corridor and that one drainage basin. That project, I mean, Tony's been leading that one for almost a whole year I've been here. So that project has been going on. You know, a grant specifically for the letdown structure, if the military has something outside of DCIP that we could use, well, we would pursue that. Yeah, and then we would probably want to get maybe somebody from the Roosevelt Group to volunteer, or, you know, even the Mike Oberhaus said he would step in and help. I mean, he stepped up to the plate and said, I'll help, because he used to write grants, you know, especially military grants. So there's resources out there, but we haven't tapped them.
So to that point, I think to piggyback on what Alderman O'Brien had said earlier, I mean, our staff has got lots of things, and Tony's got a ton of things on his plate, that if we need some additional resources, I mean, we have stuff in reserves, we have cash on hand, that if we need to help to take some of these things off of some of the staff and actually get them done sooner than later, I'm just concerned that there's a number of these things that we're missing grant-wise. I mean, we look at what we voted on with Metrolink tonight. I mean, you look at Jeff Nelson, that guy gets rabbits out of the hat constantly. I mean, you know, and here at the city, I maybe we need to figure out a model in which we are really tapping into, because I'm certain we're not getting our fair share of grants. And so a city like Moline, we should be getting more than our fair share. And if that means whatever resources, please come back to us.
All right, then.
With what that
We'll
looks like.
discuss it as a staff and determine what the need might be specifically. And, because you're right, I mean, look, there's a lot of grant money out there, and there's a lot of grant money that never gets collected. It never gets distributed. And that's true at the state level, and that's true at the federal level. So you almost have to have a professional grant writer. You almost have to have somebody, that's what they do, who is like Jeff Nelson, tapped in. I mean, he's tapped in and he's tied in, and that's how the grant money comes through, because he's running in that circle, in that Washington, D.C. circle. And that's where a lot of that money's coming through. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that we hire somebody in D.C., but somebody who might have connections or linkages or experience down the road. That's what we would have to explore. Yeah, not just lobbyists. I mean, it's great to have your lobbyists, but lobbyists are not grant writers, right? Lobbyists help you get the legislation so that you can go after the grants because you just got the project that you want to do. Let's say I-74. So I can look into that. If the council's in concurrence, I've got no issue with that. It'd be great.
We in concurrence? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Grant writers.
Anything further?
Yeah, the last thing is kind of a follow-up, and I saw that you had put all the CTC stuff here in front of us, and you hadn't, is that something that you're planning on discussing?
Yeah.
Okay, then
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll wait till you discuss it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Timian?
Thank you, Your Honor.
And I've got a medical thing, I'll be right.
Yeah. Please be safe.
Last week, I was quoted in the paper in a way that I feel did not directly convey my sentiment, and I just wanted to clear that up. I do feel that aldermen should be reporting issues as they see them to help the city. I don't think that's beyond our control or our responsibility. So I just wanted to apologize for my choice of words, and I'll do better in the future on that. Secondarily, I wanted to thank Chief Galt last week. We met concerning mental health care resources in the area and how there is a extreme lack of them. And I really appreciate the chief being on top of that over the years and trying to connect all the correct people into solving this problem. And I'm just really glad that we have such a solution-oriented member of the community to do that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Waldron?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to thank the engineering staff. They're doing a wonderful job. I think Dave left, but they're doing a wonderful job with all the construction projects out there with a limited number of inspectors, and the construction season is going well.
Thank you.
It's busy out there.
Mr. Schmidt?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Ms. Gustafson? Your turn, Mr. Vitas.
Sometimes you skip me, so I have to.
I know.
make sure. All right. Just just a couple quick updates. One is the McKinley School property. As you know, we acquired that deed in lieu of foreclosure. We had a chance to go through, tour the facility. It is what it is. We inherited it. It's ours. It's shameful what happened to the property, you know, in private hands through all those decades of possession. And rather than demolish it, I mean, because at one time that was even suggested, it needs to be secured. We have a risk involved now. We took possession of a property that individuals have been going in and out of freely without anyone stopping them. So we need to secure the property, because otherwise if somebody gets injured on the property, we might have a liability, potential lawsuit. So we reached out, I worked with Brad Hellman, he reached out to Blaze Construction, Restoration, Inc., as you know who they are, I believe, yes. And they came back with a quote to actually secure that building, and I want to just share it with you because I don't want to just do it without telling you, because you'll wonder where all the new plywood came from, right? If you ever go up there. So the cost to secure all 37 windows and doors, 37, is $9,665. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this property with the resources that we have. So it will prevent anybody from going in there during the evening hours or whenever they've been going in, because to go in there, you would know that there's been not one, not two, but many people have gone in and out based on how they have tagged the property inside. every wall, every blackboard, every inch is tagged. So,
What happened to the demolition plan? I thought we were planning to demolish that building.
well, the demolition plan originally was estimated at $300,000 to a private party. That's without Davis-Bacon being applied. So I'm envisioning that the cost, and that was over a year ago. So getting estimates for demolition certainly is one of the options. The other problem is it's the debris. It's the accumulation of the debris inside that presents a real horrific problem.
But we are planning to demolish the building eventually.
It's up to council. It's up to council. I have not heard that that building is structurally unsound. And that's really the issue. If we do go to demolish it, we have to give our historic preservation group the ability to go in and take what they want. It's just not safe to walk in there. It's just not safe to walk in there right now because of the debris that's everywhere and broken glass and all kind of things. So, you know, if the intention is demolition, then we would be looking to, you know, go out for bid. Obviously, we would want to get bids for that because that's a pretty serious amount of money. Between now and the time we bid it, we have to secure it.
So,
Have to secure
more
it.
to your point about like, what are we doing with it? From my understanding is, Mr. Vitas is looking at all the options,
I'd hope
but the
so.
number one issue right now is securing the property.
Right.
Well, I get that, but I mean, and we're gonna have a discussion on what we're gonna do with that property, I'm sure, at some
Yeah.
point in the future.
It's 6 acres is what it is. It's a 6
Yeah.
acre hillside lot.
Right.
So, you know, and then there's the community input too. I mean, we had some good discussion with members of the community. You know, they wanted control of that property. That was a big issue.
Well,
It's
I
big
have an
city.
idea that I'm willing to reveal right now. Cecilia's Park. You like it?
That's up to this council, and you know what, it's a possibility.
Okay. I don't know if there's anybody here from the Parks Department?
It was online.
Okay.
More to come.
More to
and we
come.
should certainly
Yeah, it's
talk to Mr.
informational. I'm just
Vitas.
letting you know, giving you a heads up that we are on top of it. And the same holds true for the manual arts building, but
Yeah.
that one is pretty secure. We don't have the problems in there that we do at this remote location on Fifth Avenue. So
Okay.
just a heads up on that. Which brings me to the update. 2 weeks ago when we met, council directed that we go and we get information back from through CTC, through the vendors, the 5 vendors who had originally submitted proposals for high-speed broadband service for the city. I asked Dave Talbot to provide the information that you have in front of you, specifically the summary on the first page, because it pretty much tells us that we are today where we were 2 weeks ago, pretty much. And I'll just go through it. Metronet has submitted a letter. You can see there's 2 letters. They responded originally when the council directed CTC to meet with Metronet and to meet with Windstream. They did just that. Windstream, of course, withdrew, and Metronet said, "Thank you very much. We'd like to talk to you." That's what the first letter was that they sent. Then time passed, and Windstream withdrew. Then we came back and we talked about the withdrawal. They're out. Negotiations of any formal type have not happened, just so you're aware of it. That stage hasn't taken place, negotiating the rates that we would be getting from these vendors. But as it turns out, back on the 29th of June, following our June 28th meeting, we went ahead, I reached out to both Adam Simon, following up the next morning with him, giving him some very clear direction in terms of what came out of this meeting. And I also shared direction with Mr. Talbot verbally on the phone. And if I somehow did not get the message clearly across to him, that's on me. It's not on Mr. Talbot. And I will accept that responsibility fully. But clearly, whether I accept the responsibility or not, it doesn't change where we're at on the bid. The bid is very, very clear. We have basically two vendors who are not changing anything. AT&T and MediaCom have made it clear that they are not making any revisions and have declined to make any revisions to their proposals as originally submitted. Their proposals, just so you're aware of it, were not fully buried, they were not fully aerial, they were somewhere 50-50 mixed in the middle, plus or minus 10 or 15% either way, without reading the proposals or pulling them back out. But they have responded that they will not modify anything. So that's where they sit. Windstream, of course, has still not responded. They have and they haven't. They were given the opportunity to come back and see whether or not there was still an interest. It's my understanding that they have not responded as of this evening. It's also my understanding that they had the same situation happen in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, another client of CTC's. So Windstream withdrawing or not submitting is not uncommon. There's something else going on. So it's not us, right? It's not the city. So that leaves you then with Metronet and Geneseo at this point. Metronet came back with a secondary letter following up to the June 29th email. That's attached for you to read. That's, the issue there is the aerial, of course, which is contrary to Chapter 6, clearly contrary. But they came back. They did not modify their proposal. They are looking at an 89% aerial versus 11% buried suggestion, which is what they've proposed. And that's what they proposed last year, and that's even what they proposed even earlier. They really have never changed their business model is what it comes down to. Our issue with them, one way or the other, is that, like all the vendors, we requested specifically dark fiber on any trunk and any extension lines off of those trunks. And service to the arsenal and future service to the south of the city, again, at no cost. So when those extensions take place to the city, doesn't mean they won't charge a developer, a future developer. That's a different story that we have to negotiate. Can't speak for that. And they identify it as a density issue. We will talk about it. Keep in mind, no matter what they say, no matter what any of them say, it has to be negotiated. That's why we hired CTC. When we get to the point where they have clear direction, final direction from council, they will negotiate on our behalf. That's what they're waiting for. The other issue, I believe, with the Metronet proposal was the issue of the the fiber to the traffic signals, which is expensive, given the account, and even more expensive given account to the security cameras. Nice to haves. So the immediate need is residential service. Secondary need is lighting up our security cameras versus lighting up our traffic control signals, and having that dark fiber being almost a tertiary level. I would rank them that way. So that's where we are with them. Geneseo, they reached out to Geneseo. I guess there was communication back and forth between Dave, Talbot, some of which I saw in the email traffic. They have not really changed their proposal from the time it was originally submitted. In fact, the proposal in front of us is literally the same proposal that was there February of 2021 and in the summer of 2021. It's the same proposal at $10 million, basically to bury 95% of the cable, so that we're real clear. It's 95% buried at $10 million. So the council would have to consider and weigh spending the money, $10 million, and burying it, or going the other route. And that's a policy decision. I mean, that's not an administrative decision. The message is there. I think the folks at CTC are kind of looking for direction, where we're going to go. I don't think we will hear back from Windstream. I mean, we have heard from all of them at this point. And once MediaCom said that we would just be ignored, so we're not going to bother submitting a new proposal. So that's where we're at.
Other question?
Yeah.
Mr. Wen.
A couple of things. So one was, I thought you had said to me that you guys had extended it from the
7th.
The 7th to the 15th?
Friday at noon, just to see
Okay,
if,
so-
just to see if Windstream would still come back.
So we still have some.
We have till the end of the week.
Some time
That
Uh,
deadline is artificial.
there. Yeah, no, 100%.
But it's a way to get them to respond.
My concern is, one, and I appreciate you taking responsibility that, because if you read this, what the
Yeah.
communication that went out, it's, I mean, I'm sure Alderman Walter and Alderman Timmy, this really effectuated what their vote was in that 6-2 vote. This goes absolutely counter to what the six of us who had voted was. We wanted to present a unified front that we were holding, that we were going to stick to our ordinance, that we were not going to allow aerial installation in our community at all, and that we were going to stick with that. And that was a 6-2 vote. But then the communication says the city would like to know how the change in construction approach from underground to largely aerial, says that we still prefer the underground, but it clearly undermined the idea, because we had said, well, maybe if we hold strong to that. So it doesn't surprise me at all that nobody came back with any change, because
Nope.
why would you? I mean, I'm gonna have to compete against somebody who is doing it at a tenth of the cost. Yeah. The other concern that I have is that we asked these other vendors to come back in 2 weeks' time, or about 3 weeks
It
with
was
the
literally a week.
holiday in the middle, in
Yeah.
which we're
That was the issue, there was a
Yeah.
holiday in there.
Right.
Yep.
But asking them to completely change or come back with whatever their approach would be for an aerial installation, in which you've got, 1,100, 1,200 poles in the city. We have no concept of how many of those are already loaded. Because if they are, a replacement pole might come in, that might take 6 months and cost between $2,500 and $5,000, not knowing what the distance was gonna be required between that and the power, and you're actually dealing, I think you had told me this, 2 different vendors. You've got Mid-American that owned like 60% of them, and 40% of them was
AT&T.
AT&T, which is a
We don't
competitor
know,
of
we don't know what the poll loading is, we have no idea.
100%. And so, I think that short time frame is just completely unrealistic. I mean, because we don't have that database. I mean, I think that they were all told, well, you got to go out and you got to find this out yourself in 2 weeks.
Their responsibility as a vendor to gather
Well,
the information.
understandable, but I mean,
Within a reasonable time frame.
right. But if we had an RFP that said multiple times that it was underground, and then we are kind of changing the game on them, I just got some concerns about how this whole process, because I think Alderman Schmidt had said, we went with an RFP, it said these are our requirements, and does this letter now change that RFP?
No, because the RFP as written was the RFP that we released and approved. And the RFP did not produce, if you really think about it, the RFP, based on the responses, outside of Windstream and Geneseo, did not produce anyone who qualified. Think about it, Mediacom is not 100% buried, like Chapter 6 requires. AT&T is not 100% buried, like the Chapter 6 required. Metronet, Metronet, obviously not qualified because they are not 100% buried. So you really have 2 companies, is Geneseo, and the other one is Windstream. Windstream walked away. And they were at 0, 100%, 100% buried 0, which leaves you with 100%, 95% buried, $10 million. And that's really on the table. That's where we're at. And again, that's a policy decision. It's clearly a policy
So if
decision.
I can interject at that moment, Obviously,
Oh, and
we need to.
construction timeline differences.
Yeah, construction.
It's a 2-year build-out.
So clearly, we need to get a handle on the timeline. We want to try
Yeah.
to get this
Yeah.
decided in. I told Administrator Vitas that next Tuesday's roundtable, we should devote quite a bit of time to this, especially after getting, and, gather your feedback from your constituents. Bring all that, as I mentioned earlier, triangulating information, right? And as I said in my email, I will bring in the notes from tomorrow night's discussion with community that shows up. So we'll have all that. We have these stark contrasts to manage or deal with our options,
Yeah.
and then we'll have a discussion next Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that there can be clear direction to CTC for like this step we have got to get to, which is negotiating with someone
Yeah.
to bring service here.
And I want to pass this on if I could before more questions come up. In discussions with Mr. Talbot this afternoon, I mean, they are clearly waiting for that direction. Anybody could ask us for anything, but the goal is for them to negotiate the number. So I'm not buying $10 million. You got to defend it. You got to support it, right? So that's where Joanne goes. That's where she does her work. That's her wheelhouse, not mine, not anybody else's. It's her wheelhouse. The rates that people would pay for a gig versus 500 versus 250 versus 100. That's her wheelhouse. That's the rates that she does. Getting us service to the security cameras or getting us service to those traffic control signals. That's her wheelhouse. We want her to negotiate those things, and we want her to do it hard. So, I mean, it's, the proposal, it wasn't a proposal, it wasn't a hard bid. It's a hard bid, it's a different animal. This was a proposal. So we do have the flexibility to work those numbers for the citizens.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, and I do think with Windstream's absence, right? In the original proposals, I think this was a much simpler process for me. With Windstream's absence, it very much complicates that issue because of that high cost. And I think taking the minute to try and seek that public input, because I have my doubts that it's worth the investment versus possibly allowing that exception. And I think I was there, but I'm all for letting the process run through. I do also think that Alderman Nguyen has a point about the timeline. If we truly make the decision, and I think that's going to be one of our next decisions we have to make after we collect that input of, are we going this way or that way? And if we decide to allow aerial, then perhaps we do need to allow, or if we decide we don't, either vendor, any vendor, to say, hey, no, like this is the policy decision. This is now set, right? We kind of know what our floors are on either side and say, if they need more time to come up with those comparable proposals, I think that's a reasonable point. And, but I think we're coming to that point of really just, we know the general outline, and I think it's a hard decision to make to spend that much money. And I'm curious to hear what people think. I honestly think there are big pros both ways, and I really am looking forward
Can
to
I
it.
use that city?
Was that you raising your
Well,
hand? What the heck?
I think everybody knows what I think. I think, I guess is it okay?
Yes, please.
We've been talking about this since 2018, 2019. We could have had MetroNet in 2019, but this previous council voted 7-1 not to entertain them because they wouldn't serve the entire city. By now, they might have served the entire city. And I think, realistically, I'm not interested at all in spending $1 million or $10 million on burying cable. No other city has done it. Everybody else has gone aerial. Some cities have multiple poles. I don't want multiple poles. There's some conditions. If it's already buried for infrastructure, we need to bury it. But I think what we're going to find, it's going to be a money issue, and we're going to wind up just like everybody else, and we're going to put it on a pole. And the faster we come to that conclusion, I think we're going to get through the process of RFPs or bids or whatever you want to call them, and let's get going. What we're going to hear Tuesday or tomorrow night or whenever your meeting is, I'm not going to be at it, what you're gonna hear is, I don't care what you do, get me an alternative to MediaCom.
Yeah.
That's all we hear on the phone, and we have been dithering since 2018, 2019. And I'm done dithering. I'm on the island, I'm ready to move.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen.
Just for a point of clarification, and I don't disagree with you, but it was June of 2020 that Metronet came in. It wasn't 28. I mean, when they came in 2020, we felt blessed that somebody was going to bring broadband to Moline.
You will acknowledge at least 2 years this has been.
No, I completely agree, but that is different than 4 years. I just, for the record to be clear, and we were, I think we were all set to pass it that night until they kind of all of a sudden said, oh, by the way, we're not going to give here and there, and in these secondary polls, and so, but to that point, we then went through, we did these RFPs, we actually had voted to start with a different vendor, and then I think the election happened, and then we decided not to negotiate with that vendor anymore, and then we did another RFP about a year later in
Actually,
April.
I checked the minutes because that was stated publicly yesterday. And what was in the minutes is that the interim city administrator said they were going to look at negotiating with a vendor, not Metronet. But those RFPs would have expired and on May 1st. So the previous situation was
Right, that was
not
that was in
applicable.
March. You're right.
Right,
then we changed.
and anything changing after an election only has to do with what information was available, not as a result of the election. We have asked, the first thing he did when he came was gather all the history, and then and the council came together and said we need a consultant. So I just want to be clear. I double checked the minutes and I didn't see a mention of a vote. I saw a mention of an administrative update. So that's all.
That was based on our direction. But yes.
So what I just am pleased about is that we're, as a council, pointing to some solutions. We are working ourselves there. That's one of my principal pillars of functioning that I shared with you when I first took office. Pointing to a solution is what the community needs, and I hear the I'm lacking a word here at 9:15, the urgency, right? And I also hear let's make sure we're doing it right. So as long as we continue as an entire body to try to deliver this service that we know everybody is anxious for, and we keep marching down that path, I think we're in a good place. Mr. Wine.
I guess some clarification, because I appreciate what Alderman Waldron was saying about dithering and let's get this rolling. But I also, the question that our RFP that we gave out has not changed. If the concern is, as Alderman Schmidt said, this cost, because God knows we would all love to rewind and have Windstream, and I think that would solve a lot of these issues. But if the cost is too much, and we feel okay that doesn't meet, because you said there's basically them and Windstream were Geneseo and Windstream were the only ones that really met our requirement. At that point, do we have to do an RFP again, or do we just trash the whole thing? And
I think you're free to negotiate any deal you want
do
at
whatever
that
we
point.
want. Okay.
I think you've reached out beyond, because we reached out twice.
So then how does that then affect the penalty letter that has been sent out that started the 30-day clock on the violations of our ordinance?
Well, I think they're two different situations.
Okay. I didn't know how that was affecting other.
Clearly, we will, if somehow, the council weighs all the information and goes Mr. Waldron's direction. Clearly, we have to have conversation as part of that about the ordinance, but, yeah. So I think Mr. Stavros has answered that question. anything further?
No,
sir? And do
ma'am.
we have, I
No,
believe we
ma'am.
do have executive session?
Yes, we do.
Yes,
Brief,
so,
brief.
Mr. Williams.
Your Honor, I make a motion that the council convene an executive session for the purpose of discussion of collective negotiating matters, 5 ILCS 120/2C2, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, 5 ILCS 120/2C1, and property/2C5.
Thank you. Second by Alderman Wenz. Roll call, please.
Alderman Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Wynn?
Still never.
Timian? Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Waldron?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
I don't get paid.